do not need to be declared. He is obviously facing an investigation by the Standards Commissioner into this. Now, there's a lot of speculation about what might come back from the Standards Commissioner, and we don't know exactly what he's going to conclude. But my speculation is, and sources in the Reform Party have said to me in the past 24 hours that they don't believe, essentially, that this story is going away. One suggested to me, well, if we had a general election, this would be null and void tomorrow, because essentially it wipes the slate clean for those political donations and means that you essentially would start all over again. So the rules, as we discussed them yesterday, Sheila, say that in the 12 months before you become an MP, you have to declare a certain amount of donations over the threshold. The question that obviously we're battling with is it a personal gift, or is it a sort of related to your political life? If Nigel Farage were to call a by-election and were to say, I'm going to stand down and I'm going to try to stand again to be the MP for Clacton, is there a possibility that he could wipe the slate clean in terms of these political donations and therefore not face questions about these political gifts that have happened in the last year? It seems to me to be a bit of a sneaky way out, but it is a theory that some people in Reform are openly talking about.
And do the rules allow that for by-elections as much as for general elections?
That's a good question, and I'm, as far as I'm aware, I do think that the rules are very similar, but I do know that, like I say, that is the case when a general election is called. Essentially, all of the investigations that are going on with the Standards Commissioner, with MPs, they're all essentially, put in the bin. It happens with government business. So I guess the question is, does Farage think that potentially he can get around what might be a suspension from the House of Commons by doing this weird little Commons trick? That is potential speculation.
Well, whatever he announces, if it is that, even if it isn't that seems like a loop. I wasn't aware of that. That seems like a loophole we'd want to close, given that I've spent an hour talking to people about party funding, and the answer seems to be break all the rules you like, and you might be lucky. It might be in time for a general election, in which case, you've got confessional absolution and a couple of Hail Marys and you're fine.
I don't think it will wash with the British public, will it, Sheila? Absolutely not. But like I say, there's lots of wild rumours flying around. The Reform former chairman, David Bull, said a couple of weeks ago that they believe that Nigel Farage should, quote, take a break from politics at the moment. That was seen at the time as a bit of a coded message. Is there something else going on within the party? What we do know, and what we can say, is that Nigel Farage has definitely given less press conferences, fewer press conferences in the last few months than he has done the entire time that he has returned to British frontline politics as the Reform UK leader. He used to be giving them every week, and now he hasn't been seen to give one for a good few weeks now. I think the last one I remember was Richard Tice giving one about fly tipping about a month ago, and before then we haven't seen him for a while. Obviously he's been out and about. You saw that Sky doorstep last night where he was clearly very angry at what he perceived as harassment by the media for his daughter at a house. We could be about to see Nigel Farage talk about that. That is again something else that is floating around Westminster.
Well, I should say Sky have said we did not harass his daughter in any way or contact his daughter in any way. He was coming, when they asked him, when they put those questions to him, he was returning from the Independence Day celebrations in the States. So even though, as you say, we haven't seen him that much politically here in the UK, he's still been active over there.
He has, and there was a picture of him, I believe it was taken yesterday alongside the Vice President J.D. Vance. So, he is obviously still out and about. He's obviously still doing things, but we know that this has taken a toll on his personal life before, and he's talked about the strain that this has had on his personal life before. He's talked repeatedly about how difficult he has found being in the media spotlight. So is he about to make some sort of announcement that he's going to step back from it, potentially even temporarily? Again, this is all just speculation. We don't know exactly what Nigel Farage is about to announce, but there is a possibility. And obviously, we are a few years away from a general election, Sheila. The Reform Party has been... We think. Well, the Reform Party's been preparing for one, they say, as early as 2027. But, there's lots of questions for the Reform Party if indeed Nigel Farage were to take a step back from it. Who, in terms of of the main reform figures are there waiting and ready in the wings to potentially take over as the potential future for the Reform Party. There's obviously Robert Jenrick, there's Zia Youssef, there's Richard Tice, lots of these figures. Nigel Farage, we know a lot about him. We know he doesn't particularly like tall poppies in his party. He doesn't particularly like seeing others grow in popularity in an attempt to challenge him in this way. So if Nigel Farage is not going to be around in public life in future, and again, it's a big if, we don't know what he's going to say, but if that is something that he decides to do, that presents Reform with a huge problem and prevents Andy Burnham potentially and Keir Starmer and the Labour government with a big win, because Nigel Farage is the entire reason not the entire reason, a big reason why Labour are doing so difficult, it's finding things so difficult in the polls and are doing poorly. But Nigel Farage has been leading, Reform has been leading in the polls for, I believe it's more than 120 polls in a row now, Sheila, where they have been leading.
Well, the polling of Reform since the general election, I mean, it contributed massively, not uniquely, but massively, surely, to Keir Starmer's ultimate departure, didn't it? Because
I think so, yeah.
It just he couldn't get above them again, could he, at all?
I think that's it. And obviously, you know, we saw this when we've looked at polling time and time again. I was really shocked that when we did some of that polling with More in Common, around sort of 8 or 9 months after Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, it became very clear that people were the shine was starting to wear off Sir Keir Starmer very quickly. But of course, you know, Nigel Farage has been an incredibly effective politician. He's been attacking the government at every turn. He's been giving these, you know, sort of weekly, fortnightly press conferences. He's been setting out policies, been trying to flesh out his platform, trying to grow the party, you know, make Reform, essentially turn it from a party of protest into a potential party of government. And every business you speak to in the last year has been interested, what is Reform going to do? What is Nigel Farage going to do if he does get into government? And people you speak to do think that at the moment, Nigel Farage and the Reform Party still have a pretty big chance about winning the next election. So if indeed Nigel Farage, and there's lots of media speculation this afternoon, there's just been a report out in The Independent which suggests that allies of Farage have told The Independent they expect him to, quote, take a break from leading Reform. So if indeed that is true, is there a reason for that? And where does that leave Reform after they've been leading for so long in the polls? And
we've seen Reform as a party have a different approach, haven't we, to leadership? I mean, it's, in a sense, sounds a bit rich given what's just happened at the top of government. But you know, even when Richard Tice was leader, even then, once it looked like there might be a general election, it was get him back in, and sure enough, that's what happened. So the sort of ebb and flow in Reform seems to be a simpler proposition than in other bigger parties.
Yes, obviously you saw Richard Tice, you know, basically swap jobs, didn't you, with Nigel Farage at that very dramatic press conference, what was it, a month or 2 months before the general election in 2024, and that was seen as a real surprise comeback for Nigel Farage. And, you know, there are those people in the Reform Party and across Westminster that say, does Nigel Farage really want to be Prime Minister? And especially when we talk about that poll clip that we saw last night with Nigel Farage being, of course, very concerned, very worried about what we were seeing in terms of those allegations, again, those allegations which Sky News have denied, that the media company had been trying to doorstep his daughter. Like I say, is there a potential that he is going to say something about that and his role in public life? We know that he's talked repeatedly about his security and about how he feels that he's not getting enough support from the government, enough support from the Home Office in terms of that security. He feels like he is a person who is at risk. So is he going to say something about that today in his statement? Like I say, we're all waiting for it.
Well, it's very clear he's a person at risk with the profile that he has in the country. It seems to me that's, whatever you think of Nigel Farage one way or another, that seems pretty clear, doesn't it? And again, just while we're waiting for that announcement, just a reminder of, you mentioned the parliamentary investigation into the 5 million from Christopher Harborne, the crypto billionaire who lives abroad. Just remind us about George Cottrell, this much younger man who has been a close associate of Nigel Farage's for a long time. Some people say he was like a second skin for a while.
Yes, and some people even refer to him as sort of Nigel Farage's sort of father-son relationship. They talk about them being so close. This is George Cottrell, and this is the man who has been convicted in America for a form of fraud. He's long been a man around Nigel Farage. He's long been a very, very close ally. He's been involved in the Reform Party, although not in sort of an official capacity, but has long very much been an ally of Nigel Farage. And the latest revelations, at least according to the Sunday Times, which have not been even denied by the Reform Party, that he, and he's known as Posh George in Westminster circles, Sheila, was involved in donating funds to Farage to help pay for his social media, to pay for staff, and as well, he apparently paid for accommodation for Nigel Farage to stay in a flat near Buckingham Palace as well. So the question is this a personal gift for Nigel Farage? Therefore, it does fall outside the rules, the Standards Commissioner investigation, or is this a political gift? If he was indeed doing social media for Nigel Farage's office, that leads to speculation that potentially it could be a little bit more than
He's
that.
speaking now. Let's go live.
To be the elected member for Clacton-on-Sea. I was very proud of that evening, and I have to say the last 2 years I've really enjoyed the job of being an MP. The people, the constituency, it's an office that I genuinely adore. I couldn't have believed that night that we'd have rocketed to the top of the opinion polls, and now we've been number one for the last 350 opinion polls in a row, often with big leads. We've also built the biggest membership of any political party in the country. And of course, on May the 7th, just gone, we achieved some huge successes in the local elections. Not only did we achieve breakthroughs in Scotland and in Wales, but we absolutely dominated in the Midlands and the North, the old Labour heartlands. And that is why Keir Starmer is now on his way out. Not to forget that in East Anglia, the Conservatives have now, by us, been reduced to nothing more than a rump. It seems to me that the establishment have now decided that they can't beat us fairly, so they've chosen to use foul means. Let me be absolutely reduced to nothing more than a rump. It seems to me that the establishment have now decided that they can't beat us fairly, so they've chosen to use foul means. Let me be absolutely clear. After the furore and the media pile-on, well, not just the media, the other political parties too, let me be absolutely clear. I have done nothing wrong. I have not broken the law in any way at all. I have not misused public money. And you know, for the first 2 years of being an MP, my personal MP expenses are zero. Not, of course, that you'll read about that in mainstream media. And yes, of course, Parliament has its rules about how members ought to behave. And I believe I've absolutely obeyed those rules and done so under getting good legal advice. The standard rules are clear. This is what they say. The code applies to members in all aspects of their public life. It does not seek to regulate what members do in their purely personal lives. Now, it would seem from the last couple of years, from the way I've been treated, that the press would rather our members of Parliament had no assets and no wealth at all. They seem to fundamentally object to any MP that has outside income. Indeed, they view those that have continuing business interests with severe scepticism. Making money is not a crime. Now, going back to the 90s, I was in the commodity markets. I had a very, very good, high-earning career. I gave that up at a huge cost. Being a member of the European Parliament for 20 years cost me a huge amount of money. But I did it because I had a goal. I had a goal and a belief that we should leave the European Union, get back to being a self-regulating nation that makes its own laws, charts its own destiny, and among other things, of course, controls its own borders. We might not yet, 10 years on, have reaped as many of the benefits as we ought, but one day I believe we will. And let's be frank, if I hadn't done what I'd done, there would have been no referendum, there would have been no Brexit. I came out at the end of that with very little money indeed. But over the last 10 years, I've been writing, I've been lecturing, I've been broadcasting, I've been investing. I promoted 1 or 2 financial products, and for those that followed me into them, they've more than doubled their money, which I'm pleased about. I also worked extensively in those years of 2021 to 2024 as an influencer with over 7 million followers on social media. So yes, over the last 10 years, I have financially done well. But that of itself should not be looked upon as a crime. And yes, I had the equivalent of a lottery win, a large personal gift. And I'll come to that and the details of that in just a second. The really big question that I want to pose is, do we want leaders that know how to make money? Do we want leaders that have run businesses, employed people, and understand how the world works? Well, I'm going to argue today, we absolutely need successful people from all walks of life, but particularly from business and industry. We need them not just in Parliament, we need them in government if we're even going to have half a chance of turning around the dire economic state this country now finds itself in. Contrast that with a cabinet, 24 men and women, not one of whom has any serious experience of private business, who frankly haven't got a clue. So don't be surprised that in economic terms we are going down the drain. Now, Standards investigating me over the gift has now reared its head again as a result of a lot of copy in this week's Sunday Times, incidentally written by a journalist who publicly says that he despises me. And despite the fact that many of the things that were written in the article were wholly inaccurate or indeed irrelevant, yet another Standards investigation is underway. Standards are now being used as a political tool. On the gift, it was given to me on an unconditional basis. I can do with that money exactly as I wish. But there is a much bigger reason why I'm going to need that money, and it's simply this. For over 20 years now, I have been subject to constant demonisation by the press. For daring to be outside the consensual view on many issues, I've been attacked again and again. And I am the most physically and verbally attacked public figure or politician of modern times. Yes, you will know of some of the incidents, milkshakes thrown in my face, placards bashed over my head, but let me promise you, you only know about a fraction of the number of times that I've been assaulted. One little example you've probably never heard of. It was a Sunday afternoon a few years ago in the local village pub. In come the mob, about 50 of them. We decided the safest thing to do was as quickly as possible to get into the car and to drive away. But the mob surrounded the car, banging on the bonnet and the windscreen, kicking the side of the doors. It was a genuinely dangerous and terrifying situation to be in. The car was written off. I didn't even bother with an insurance claim and did everything I could not to make it public. But these are the kind of things that I've had to put up with over many, many years. And over the last year it's got worse, with an attack on my home, very similar to the one that the Prime Minister suffered, and literally daily online calls for me to be murdered. For some reason, that doesn't seem to worry the police. Repeatedly over the years, I asked the Home Secretary for help. I was rejected again and again. And in that period, when I wasn't in elected politics, between 2021 and 2024, I ran up personally very, very substantial bills to make sure that I was safe. When I became an MP, Parliament said, yes, we will help you with security. But almost unbelievably, just a couple of days after the murder of Charlie Kirk, 70% of that security funding was withdrawn. I am going to need security for the rest of my life, and I cannot even tell you how grateful I am to Christopher Harborne, because now I will never ever need to worry about whether I've got the resource. Well, the new attack from the media is that somehow I am a crook, I am dishonest. Yet another reason to hate me. Commentators over the weekend have said, oh, look at the interviews Nigel's doing. He's not himself. He's getting angry. Well, here's why. For some reason last week, the editor of the Times newspaper decided to publish a picture of where my daughter lives. There is no public interest in my daughter whatsoever. She is not involved in current affairs, doesn't seek to be involved in current affairs, and has never been used by me once at any point in my political career. No photographs on election addresses or anything like that. I've always done my absolute best to protect the privacy and safety of my family. By publishing that photograph, the editor of the Times has directly threatened her security. I wonder what happened to the Leveson inquiry of years ago, an inquiry that sought to bring better balance between what the press could do and families of those in public life. Worse still, she now has broadcasters haranguing her. Sky News were one of them, and when I questioned them on it, they willfully and deliberately lied and said on their channel that they hadn't contacted the family. Well, let me be clear. I will not tolerate intimidation of my family. I will not tolerate the location of where they live being revealed. I will not tolerate any of my family being endangered because of what I choose to do in public life. So yes, you can ask, am I angry? But I've never been angrier in my life. I'm also pretty upset with the behaviour of this Labour government. They began in 2025 and then tried again into 2026 to cancel elections for taxpayers, and to do so on a vast and epic scale, albeit with the connivance of the Conservative Party. Why? Well, of course, fear of reform. I'm proud of the fact that we fought a legal action that got nearly 5 million council tax voters the right to go out on May the 7th and give their view. Now, of course, they want to reduce the voting age down to 16. Again, they think that will help damage reform. And just a couple of weeks ago, following the Makerfield by-election, they've changed the voting rules for the Manchester mayoral by-election. They've gone away from first past the post, again for fear that reform might win. And now they've come after our money. Now, to be clear, in the early days after the last general election, it was the huge increase in our membership at £25 a time that actually got us into a position where we could build a proper party. Over the last year, some big donors have been attracted to us. Extraordinary. These are men who've gone off as entrepreneurs around the world and succeeded. The sort of people we used to admire over centuries. Now government ministers refer to them in Parliament as malign actors. And so they keep changing all the rules again and again just to stop reform. Frankly, it is like living in a communist country. I could never have believed such a thing would happen here. Ignore the fact, of course, that over decades peerages have been given to donors, and that Labour's donors, in the run-up to the 2024 general election, now seem to have been awarded the most extraordinary government contracts. Perhaps Dominic Cummings was right last year when he said Whitehall will break the law to stop reform winning power. And we've been subject in the last few months to the use of illegally obtained information, firm evidence of computer hacking, and now leaks from government agencies. And this is all, of course, a great distraction, because we're about to get a Prime Minister who's coming in with no mandate whatsoever. He didn't even stand on the 2024 manifesto. This country needs a general election, even if Labour, the Conservatives and the media don't want it. And whilst this pile-on against reform happens, the boats continue to cross the English Channel. Our fractured defences make us look weaker and weaker against what I think is now an increasingly dangerous Vladimir Putin. Business confidence is the lowest it's now been for 16 years, and I speak to you from a capital city where men can't wear watches and women can't wear jewellery on the street. Britain is broken and the public know it, and we need change. Now, the issue with my daughter was the final straw. Enough is enough. And I thought over the weekend, what shall I do? I could go out and try and make some real big money. I could go to the USA, where I've got plenty of offers. And then I thought, why should I be judged, today or in history in the future, by Sky News and their ilk? Why should they be the people that decide my fate when, as I repeat, I've done nothing wrong? I've thought about it hard, and I've decided today I will resign as a Member of Parliament for Clacton-on-Sea, thereby forcing a by-election, which should happen, I hope, in short order. No, I've decided that the people of Clacton should be the judges of my actions. This will be a people versus the establishment by-election. It's a chance to stick two fingers up to the entire establishment, to frankly tell them where to go. And that is why I will be putting my name forward to stand in this by-election. I will fight to win. I will fight to continue the political revolution that reform has started. And I would say this to you, the voters of Clacton: if I win, you win. Because if I lose, they win. And we will never, with the two old parties, get the type of fundamental change that we need to fix broken Britain. Thank you.
Something akin to what Natasha Clark was suspecting when I spoke to her earlier on. I'm joined in the studio as well by Bethany Dawson, LBC's political correspondent. If you are just joining us here at LBC, Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, has resigned or intends to resign as MP for Clacton, and in his words, let the people decide who he is and whether he's a trustworthy man in politics. The people, he says, putting two fingers up to the establishment. And he'd spent quite a number of minutes there before he got to that point at the very end. Talk about burying the lead. He buried the lead for sure. But talking about what he regards as an attempt to crush him by the political establishment. You can watch LBC live on the LBC app, this programme, Global Player, and on YouTube as well. Bethany, first of all, there were a number of options at play here as to whether he would resign as leader, resign as MP. Talk us through what you've just heard. What's your sense of things?
Well, this is kind of incredible. There is going to be a by-election in Clacton, and Nigel Farage has said he will stand down. Unusually for a by-election, he said he will fight it. This is sort of to prove the establishment wrong, to prove that he has the mandate of the people. We should say that he very much got elected in 2024. It's not like, he was placed there by some sort of, alien. He won the election.
Yes, he did.
2 years ago, and he's sort of saying that he will prove once again that he can do it to prove the media wrong. No media has, of course, ever suggested he didn't win in Clacton. This is something we haven't really seen before. It is a fight against the media, against the establishment, against the opposition to prove, frankly...
Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Frankly, to prove that he deserves the job that he already has. It's interesting, I was speaking to Reform just yesterday saying it's very odd that we don't have anything from Nigel Farage on the diary this week. Will he pop up? And they said, things change, but no, at the moment, not. And we saw some reporting in the Telegraph that suggested the Conservatives were in fact planning for a by-election. They're probably wiping their brows right now. And again, when I put that to Reform and I said, will there be a by-election? I'm hearing these odd rumours. They said, well, no, probably not. But if there is, he will fight it. So they were already briefing that should there be a by-election, of course there won't be. But if there will be, he will fight it because he is tough enough, because he can win, because he has the mandate. And here we are.
It's been described already by Tim Farron, former leader of the Liberal Democrats, as, quote, Olympic standard whining. Stay with us if you can, Bethany. We'll continue to talk, and I'll speak to Andrew Marr in just a moment. It's 2:30. You're listening to LBC. Let's get some headlines first from Matt Hewitt.
Nigel Farage has announced in the last few moments that he's resigning as MP for Clacton-on-Sea to force a by-election in which he'll stand. The Reform leader has reiterated that he's done nothing wrong as his financial affairs come under scrutiny. Also in the last few minutes, Prince Harry and other celebrity claimants have lost their privacy lawsuit against the publisher of the Daily Mail at the High Court. Elton John, Baroness Lawrence and Liz Hurley had joined the Duke of Sussex in claiming widespread unlawful information gathering by associated newspapers. And a murder investigation is underway after 3 people were found dead at a property near Bedford. Police were called yesterday after concerns for a mother and her 2 children. LBC weather, cloudy in the north, drizzle for Scotland and the far north of England. Further south, plenty of sunshine, hot in the southeast, highs of 12 to 31 degrees.
This is LBC.
Lotto from the National Lottery now gives you 2 chances to win with every ticket. So it could be you and it could be you. You and then the same you again. You. 1 ticket, 2 chances to win. New Lotto. It could be you and it could be you. See website for Lotto changes. Rules apply. Players must be 18 or over.
A message from TfL.
I saw Alicia's photo in my newsfeed. All I can think of is her family. How they're getting on. If they're getting on. I didn't look when I pulled out, and she never made it home. Sounds crazy, but it felt like her motorbike came out of nowhere. But I know the truth. I didn't look again.
Drivers, take another look, not a life. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Time for a kitchen upgrade, but not sure who to trust? At Wickes, you can include installation on a wide range of kitchens, all carried out by professional installers and covered by our 2-year workmanship guarantee. Plus, we're rated excellent on Trustpilot. Book your free kitchen design appointment at Wickes.
The FIFA World Cup is here. We've been waiting for it, dreaming of it. Absolutely nothing could make it any better. Except getting a McDelivery. With delivery fee from 99p. Go on! Bring it home! 18 plus. Service fee and small order fee may apply. Participating restaurants. Serving times and T's and C's apply.
Sheila Fogarty on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Just to remind you that Prince Harry has just lost his privacy case at the High Court. We'll bring you more on that a little later in the show. But let's talk first to Andrew Marr, presenter of Tonight with Andrew Marr on LBC, weekdays from 6. Don't miss it later on. Andrew, what just happened?
What happened is that Nigel Farage resigned his Clacton seat and said he's going to start a by-election. So we are going to have what I think is going to be a titanic fight on the right. We've had the Conservatives and Reform getting increasingly antsy about each other, an increasingly bitter argument going on between the two parties. Given that Nigel Farage won, I think it was 46% of the vote exactly 2 years ago against the Tories at 26%. This is not an equal fight. This is a fight that is already in his favour. So it's not quite as dramatic as he suggested. He said this was going to be the people and Reform against the establishment. Well, in Clacton, in the by-election, the establishment as such won't be putting up a candidate. I'm sure he will have lots of personal attacks against him by, as it were, mainstream media. But the establishment won't have a candidate. The Conservatives will have a candidate. So I think the pressure, in a sense, is on Kemi Badenoch right now to show that she can do better against Nigel Farage after all these attacks upon him than they did back in the general election.
It's fair to say that Kemi Badenoch has repositioned the Tories a bit, hasn't she, in those 2 years? It hasn't shown dramatically in the polls, but it hasn't really been tested, has it?
It hasn't been tested. Her own personal ratings are doing much better, and in the Westminster bubble, as it were, most of us are saying that she has been performing much better. That hasn't translated into national polls, but that will happen. I mean, those two things will be connected eventually, and so this will be a very, very interesting test for her wider reach. Nigel Farage, in that fairly lengthy statement, made a point of saying how well Reform had done in Essex and around London in that Tory heartland, represented, of course, by Kemi Badenoch and many other senior Conservatives. This is also personal.
I was speaking to Natasha Clark, LBC's political editor, before the announcement was made, and in a sort of list of possibilities, one of them was this, but prompted not by a desire to return to the people and, reconnect with his constituents and test who really represents the right, but to use the electoral system as it exists to wipe the slate clean on that 5 million. Can you explain a bit more about this? Because I didn't know about this rule.
It's jolly technical and complicated, but as I understand it, once he ceases to be an MP, the parliamentary investigation into him also ceases. And therefore he comes back re-elected as an MP and would not expect to face the same kind of test by the parliamentary authorities that he's facing now. I don't think that, to be honest, is at the centre of this. It's part of it, I'm quite sure. I think sometimes we have to take people at their word. I think he is genuinely, absolutely livid about what happened to his daughter, and he is now fighting a personal feud with the editor of The Times, with the editor of The Sunday Times, and with Sky News, all of whom he blames for what happened to his daughter.
They claim they did not do what he claims, which is how
I'm sure they did, and it'll be back and forth for some time. But this feels very personal.
So in that statement, we talk about don't bury the lead, don't we, in journalism? I mean, he very much buried the lead there. Tim Farron, former Liberal Democrat leader, described that announcement as Olympic standard whining. On the question of security, I don't think that is whining. I think a political leader of his prominence and his sort of Marmite attitudes people have, and not just that, the record of attacks on him, which some we know about, he claims many we don't know about. It does seem a bit counterproductive to put him out there exposed, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, he's not a very close personal friend of mine. We don't sit around in North London coffee houses sipping lattes together, but I've seen him moving around socially and so on, and he does move with a lot of protection and a lot of security around him. I think that bit is true, that he does feel personally attacked, he does feel personally threatened a lot of the time, and he finds life hard. And of course, people would say, yeah, but a lot of what you're saying means personal attacks on other people, many of whom you've never met. So, it goes both ways. But there's no doubt that he has felt attacked and intimidated by the mainstream media and by its supporters for an awful long time. It's very hard to kind of disentangle this, but it seems to be, in a sense, what he's doing is he's picked up from the gamble that Andy Burnham took in Makerfield. Nigel Farage is, above everything else, a showman, and he loves to play to the gallery, and he saw a real showman in Andy Burnham in Makerfield, and massive political result and a win for Andy Burnham there, and he's thinking, I can do the same, but I'll do it on the right, and I'll do it down in on the south coast.
Yeah, that occurred to me as well, that he was looking for a Makerfield moment. And yet, when you look at the detail of what he's complaining about here, that they are, in a sense, nothing new, are they? I mean, individual detail may be new, but they're not. His claim that the establishment is out to get him is hardly new. It's
an old trope from Reform. And he attacked both of the parties. Actually, he attacked Labour more than anybody else because they are trying to change the law on overseas donations and what they see as malign overseas actors coming in and buying into British politics. It's interesting that he threw in a line there about Vladimir Putin suddenly becoming dangerous because, of course, he and Reform have been accused in the past of being too close to the Russians, too close to Putin. And the other thing, of course, talking of foreign leaders, is there was an awful lot in this of Donald Trump, where he's standing up there and saying it's really important that politicians can make lots of money, understand business, and we don't blame them for enriching themselves. That is a very Trump message, and he has been involved deeply in the cryptocurrency story, as has Trump.
I'm really quite stunned that I didn't know I'm giving myself a slap on the wrist, that I didn't know about the suspension of investigations when an election, by-election or general election happens. Tell me, is that a permanent suspension, a permanent end to those investigations, or do they resume?
As I understand it, once he's back in Parliament, it will be open for somebody to try to reopen the investigation again. I don't think you can dodge forever. But it certainly pauses it. And if he comes back having just won the support of the people of Clacton in a very large way, then that'll change the sort of atmosphere around any kind of investigation. And the sense of, there might be a recall petition, which is what we were saying before. There might be a recall petition. He might have to go back and face a by-election. Well, he's going to have preempted all of that.
Maybe that's part. I mean, again, we're wondering, aren't we? But I wonder whether he's looked at his situation with the Parliamentary Standards Committee and investigation and thought, actually, they probably will suspend me for a sufficient number of days to...
OK. I would be surprised if that's the case, Sheila, only because, to the extent we outsiders can look at these things, I think he probably has broken the rules, but not to the extent that he would be suspended from the House of Commons for 14 days or more. In other words, I think you gave yourself a slap on the wrist. I think they would give him a slap on the wrist.
So do those investigations cease immediately or just at a certain point before the by-election or once it's announced?
You're getting well beyond my detailed knowledge there,
well,
Sheila.
That reassures me.
I could pretend to know, but I won't.
Yeah. I mean, and he's clearly... I wondered if he might resign as leader of Reform and as an MP today, but... Go on.
Well, I was going to say he raised that possibility, didn't he? He said, I could go to America where I have lots of friends and lots of opportunities. I could walk away. So he dangled that possibility, really so that all those people who support him in Reform and on the right of politics will be going, no, Nigel, please, Nigel, don't do that. So, he's clearly thought about it.
And this is, I feel like I'm doing an obit prematurely, which I shouldn't be, but he is... For people who can't bear him or his politics, he's inexplicable in some way. But for those who like his politics and are looking for something new, they may have reservations, they may not. You can't really overstate his impact on our politics. He's upended Britain, hasn't he?
Well, he wasn't wrong to say that by becoming an MEP and, leading UKIP, he created the conditions under which Brexit happened. Of course, Brexit would not have happened had David Cameron not promised that referendum. So he can share responsibility with David Cameron to that extent, and Boris Johnson. But he was certainly a very, very big part of that story. Now, a lot of people now see him as being on the way to number 10 himself. There's no way that Labour, even under Andy Burnham, can win the next election, and it's kind of a foregone conclusion. I have to say, Sheila, he didn't sound to me like somebody who today thought that himself.
No, he certainly didn't say it, did he?
No.
he was ready to say a lot, and he didn't say that. Thanks, Andrew. Very good to talk to you. As ever, Andrew Marr, presenter of Tonight with Andrew Marr on LBC, weekdays from 6. Don't miss that later on. Marita's call from Lambeth. Marita, what's in your mind, on your mind?
Oh, I think this is just the classic deflection tactics. Don't look here, look over there, and let's carry on like none of this even happened. I was quite surprised that rule even existed.
So am I.
Or exists, rather. Yeah, it's definitely one that needs to be done away with, I would suggest.
Me too. I mean, if somebody's political career ends and they're not operating politically, I can kind of understand why Parliament might say, well, what's the point of, unless a crime has been committed, in which case you'd hand that over to the police. But I think somebody who is still a party leader, standing in a by-election, even if it's suspended for the period of the election, and even then I can't particularly see why that would need to be the case, but, the quiet investigation of it, I see no reason why it should cease permanently.
Exactly. It should be completely done away with. I wasn't quite sure. Is he suggesting he's going to step down so there can be a by-election and then he's going to put himself back up for election again? Is that what he's doing?
Yeah, which he can do.
God, it just seems like we're losing the run of ourselves.
More taxpayers' money.
Yeah. A couple of other things that stood out from the speech for me was him invoking the Levinson inquiry, which I thought was quite hilarious because he was all for freedom of the press and let the media be unscrutinised, let them carry on. And I was quite surprised that it was the Times that broke the story on him, for whatever reason is going on in that great big world that we aren't a party to. It's just the whole thing is just not right. It doesn't. For me, it doesn't. The whole thing doesn't pass the sniff test.
Do you think an MP should be able to do that? I'm resigning in order to play
I don't think so.
A little bit.
No, I don't think so. Like, if that's the case, you could be having mini by-elections every other day of the week within a 4-year government term. Like, I don't even agree with what happened with Andy Burnham. I think that shouldn't have been allowed to happen either, purely from a democracy point of view.
Which bit of it?
The fact that Josh Simons resigned and Andy Burnham was allowed to stand, that by-election happened.
Well, MPs can resign for all kinds of reasons, can't they?
They can, but again, that didn't pass the sniff test for me because it was just too perfectly set up that MP in his area
but I'm not sure
that stood down.
Yeah, but I'm not sure they were hiding why ever.
I don't think sometimes you don't know the reason why anything happens at the time it happens, and it only becomes more evident later on down the line.
Well, I think, if you listen to some of the reflections to post Andy Burnham winning in Makerfield, you'll see that it was very much a plan, and Andy Burnham wouldn't have stood in a seat that he was overly anxious about losing, I don't think. Thanks very much, Marita, for your call. Marita in Lambeth, what do you make of what Nigel Farage has just announced? That he's going to step down as MP for Clacton in order to stand in a by-election to be MP for Clacton. The rules, he didn't talk about this, but the rules around by-elections and elections are that any investigations, parliamentary investigations into prospective parliamentary candidates, which he will become, are suspended. We'll dig down into some more detail about that particular parliamentary rule, because that's the bit that I still have questions about. I wonder what you think of it. 0345 6060 973. You can watch us live, by the way, both on the LBC app, Global Player, and on YouTube. It's 2:46.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
No need to seek work for 100,000 people who have ADHD being paid disability benefits. Maddie Alexander-Grant is a disability advocate.
Having ADHD doesn't just automatically give you a tick on a benefits form.
We'll come to your views now.
I love what I do, but the ADHD does affect your ability to sleep.
They grow up in an environment where it's normal to stay at home all day, go to the post office once a week and collect money.
So I've been for 8 months with DWP. I'm a full-time worker, never got any benefits.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
The Emmy-winning global phenomenon returns on HBO Max. House of the Dragon's most fiery season yet brings breathtaking battles.
Look to the sky.
And the jaw-dropping betrayals that only the world of Game of Thrones can deliver.
In a war, all suffer.
House of the Dragon, now streaming on HBO Max.
There will be no doubt the gods have chosen to rule.
Subscription required. T's and C's apply. 18+.
Welcome back to this summer's tournament coverage with BetMGM, where every game's the main event.
Can you guess the game of the tournament so far?
It's gotta be Golden Spin.
Golden Spin, BetMGM's free-to-play game where you can spin every day from 9 a.m. throughout the tournament.
For the chance to win free bets, profit boosts, and more.
What a game!
BetMGM, where every game's the main event. Eligible customers only. Minimum £10 deposit required. 1 entry per day. Exclusions, restrictions, and T's apply. 18+. Please gamble responsibly.
For whoever they want to be in life, give them a great start with WellKid. Carefully balanced, great-tasting vitamins and minerals for 4 to 12-year-olds with specific nutrients such as zinc and vitamin D, which support normal immune system function. The WellKid range from Vitabiotics, from Boots, pharmacies, and Vitabiotics.com.
40 million people listen to commercial radio each week. That's 80 million ears, give or take. Amplify your advertising at radiocentre.org.
Vodafone is backing the UK with an £11 billion investment to make the nation's biggest network even better.
Fair play, that's a big commitment.
So you can launch that business.
So I can start selling my model trains in Pwllheli.
Multitask in a haze of glory.
I could stream Wimbledon whilst on a video call.
Start doing more of what you love from more places. Opportunity awaits. Switch to Vodafone today on the nation's network.
Nation's network means UK's biggest network through Vodafone 3 merger based on mobile sites versus major providers. Network improvements by 2034. See vodafone.co.uk/TNN, subject to coverage.
Get ready for even bigger savings in the Hillary Summer Sale with an extra 10% off absolutely everything. That's on top of up to 50% off hundreds of made-to-measure blinds, curtains and shutters. Plus, right now, grab our introductory offer of up to 50% off selected brand new roller and vertical blinds. And don't forget, with Hillary's, measuring and fitting is always included. So get window-wise and book your free in-home appointment today at hillarys.co.uk. Conditions apply.
Sheila Fogarty on LBC. Listen on your smart speaker. Just say, play LBC.
And what do you know, as if by magic, Rupert Lowe is to make an announcement on, I presume, this by-election, this announcement. He is from the Restore party, and they had a fair old showing, 7% of the vote in Makerfield. So let's see how that goes. We'll let you know what Rupert Lowe says once he's said it. In the meantime, let me get to your calls on this announcement. Oh, is that... Oh, Rupert Lowe has tweeted. Let me tell you what he said. He says Farage, using just the surname, has proven one thing today and one thing only. Everything that he does is about one person, Nigel Farage. The people of Clacton do not need a media circus descending on their town over a busy tourist season because the MP has made a series of bad decisions. He should have declared that £5 million. He knows it. We all know it, says Rupert Lowe. Now he's going to weaponise a by-election to distract from that. This is going to cost the taxpayer a fortune. £250,000. Eye-watering sums of money. Think about what that money could do for the people of Clacton. Will Farage fund it out of his own pocket? Because he, quotes, bloody well should. This is making a mockery of our entire democratic process. He made bad decision after bad decision and concealed money in a way that has spectacularly backfired. A by-election will not deflect from that fact, and nor should it. I will be making an announcement, says Rupert Lowe, later today about Restore Britain's plans for the Clacton by-election. I think there's something in parts of what Rupert Lowe says there about the reasoning behind this election. If voters judge it to be in order to save his own rear end, then they won't like it. They may not view it that way. They may still vote. He had a very strong vote in the last general election, Reform UK and Nigel Farage. So that may withstand this pressure, but it'll be a very particular kind of argument being had there, won't it? And as Andrew Marr was saying to me just a moment ago, it's a battle for the right of our political, of our nation, the political right in our country. Callum has called from Newcastle, a Reform supporter. Hello, Callum.
How are you doing? You all right?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. I think this is the smartest move he could have done. I think it's absolutely very well precise and very well spoken about. He has came out and said, like, I am a victim, and I do agree, I do believe he is a victim of not just the press, because I do believe the press does most of the time do very balanced things, but he is a victim of kind of being attacked and judged for things that he shouldn't be. Yes, I do think he's made a lot of mistakes. As a Reform supporter, I do think he's made a lot of mistakes as in not declaring. I think he's been given wrong advice, etc. But I do generally believe that this by-election will now take him from 46% to roughly 60%. And I think the next polling will take Reform from around 25 to maybe 32, 33, 34.
What makes you think that?
Because I do feel like this country is a situation where we do believe that, I'm sorry, but like Conservative and Labour are being absolutely useless. Lib Dem are fantastic in local areas, but absolutely useless on the whole country. Great in your local parks, great on your local roads, but useless in the public. And I think the case is what we think now, especially for myself, feels like, come on, let's go, let's attack, let's get the mainstream parties and prove what is the case of, like, Nigel has been a victim of scrutinisation on another level. So, for example...
He hasn't, Callum.
I would disagree. Like I say, I do agree that the press normally is pretty balanced. I'm not going to argue that point because I do, like, LBC is one of the best for it. I will not deny that.
Yeah, I'm not even talking about what we do. I'm talking about just political scrutiny. It's hideous for all of them.
But
and it's necessary.
I'm sorry, but just to jump in, sorry, apologies, Sheila,
right.
Look at Rishi Sunak.
Yeah.
Made, what, 2 million, 2.3 million, and was making that while he was Prime Minister. Was any of these questions asked at all?
He wasn't advising any consultancies when he was Prime Minister, and the 2 million he has made is based on consultancies for a post-Prime Ministership.
So
he literally couldn't do it while he was Prime Minister and didn't do it while he was Prime Minister. And actually, on scrutiny, his wife's tax affairs were so heavily scrutinised, she had to give up non-dom status.
Yes, I agree
So
with
Nigel Farage is not uniquely targeted. He really isn't.
No, I do agree with that. He is not uniquely targeted. He is definitely targeted a lot more. But the other argument I would say...
What evidence do you have for that? I mean, the scrutiny, just to use Rishi Sunak as an example, there was, because I remember it in the press, constant scrutiny about his wife's wealth, her father's wealth, her connection to her father's wealth. Constant.
So I personally don't remember it being
it was, Callum.
This intense. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying it doesn't feel
she
as
had
this
to give
intense
up.
now.
She had to give up. She's the wife. So she's the equivalent of the daughter in this story, if you see what I mean. As in she's not an elected person. She had to give up her tax code because of press scrutiny.
But to be fair, again, I'm not trying to defend Nigel in that kind of scenario, and I'm not trying to compare the both. What I'm trying to say is, in that scenario, is yes, she was scrutinised, but to be fair, the non-dom scrutiny was going on for years.
Yeah, I'm not saying it was unfair against Rishi Sunak's wife. I'm just saying, that the point is that the press scrutiny was sufficiently intense for the wife of the Prime Minister to change her tax status. Nigel Farage is not uniquely targeted by the press. He just isn't. Callum, thank you. Nicola in Great Missenden, I should say. I know you said Greater Manchester, very different places. Hello, Nicola.
It is very different. Hello. I just wanted to say about Nigel Farage that he says there's no money in politics, and I would rather disagree. I think it's nearly £100,000 the salary for an MP, and if you ask anyone who works in teaching or catering or a multitude of other professions, they will never earn £100,000. It's a considerable amount of money. And he doesn't actually show up for work very much if you check Hansard. He's not there very often, and he doesn't vote very often. And so I think that his opponents should really make it clear to the people of Clacton that they're paying this man a considerable amount of money, and he's not actually turning up for work. He's spending his time doing other things that profit him. And that this technique of calling a by-election to try and really get more support and tell everyone to shut up and stop scrutinising him is now going to cost even more taxpayers' money because he doesn't like the scrutiny. And so there's something just icky about it. It just doesn't seem very respectable, honourable, decent. It doesn't seem to show respect for his constituents or anyone, really.
Do you think it's petulant?
Yes, he doesn't. He likes to do what he likes, make as much money as he can, and doesn't want to be held accountable.
Do you believe?
He's a bit of a grump about it.
Do you believe his, as he calls it, the establishment is using foul means against him by examining the $5 million? He didn't mention George Cottrell in any major way, did he? I noticed.
No, of course he should be held accountable. He's a public figure who's paid a considerable amount from the public purse to do a job that he's not doing. So I think it's really important that his constituents are made aware that what he's supposed to do for them, he doesn't do.
But that moment when he said, I took the best legal advice around what I needed to declare and what I didn't need to declare, the rules are clear, he says, I've done nothing wrong, and the rules are that the code, the ministerial or the MP's code, parliamentary code, applies to activities in your public life, not your private life. And his £5 million gift was a generous, life-saving gift from a friend.
Yes, that's what he says. It's a bit of a stretch, though, isn't it? I think has there been an outcome from the parliamentary committee that we're looking into it?
It's being suspended because of the announcement of the by-election. So that's the rat I'm smelling.
Yeah, well, the thing is, if you applied a but-for rule, would he have got that $5 million but for being who he is in politics? I doubt it, which means that it is to do with politics.
Well, he also said it was a reward for campaigning for Brexit, so the reason for the $5 million changed.
Well, yes, but that's political as well, isn't it? Mm. So there isn't really it's a spurious claim, I would say.
OK, thank you very much indeed, Nicola. Nicola in Great Missenden in Buckinghamshire. What are you making of this announcement from Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader, that he is to not resign as Reform UK leader, which some people were speculating on, but to step down as the MP for Clacton, the Reform MP for Clacton, in order for the people of Clacton to tell the establishment that's coming after him on any number of fronts, according to Nigel Farage, to butt out and that he has their support. If you're a voter in Clacton of any hue, it would be great to hear your thoughts on it. If you're a voter who voted for him and isn't inclined to do so this time around, it'd be interesting to know why. It'd be great to hear from you in Clacton. Zach Polanski, and he said Roman Polanski. Zach Polanski has tweeted, Nigel Farage is a grifter, always has been, continuing to grift. He knew he was heading towards a by-election anyway, so has pulled the trigger early. The people versus the establishment. Reform are literally part of the establishment. This man has taken money now from crypto billionaires and convicted criminals, and those are just the ones we know about, says Zach Polanski, the leader of the Green Party. This is another circus when actually the government should be taxing wealth fairly and cleaning up money and politics. Time for the news.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 3 o'clock, Nigel Farage is resigning as MP for Clacton-on-Sea so he can stand in a by-election there.
This will be a people versus the establishment by-election.
The Reform UK leaders accused the press of intrusion into his family. It comes as his financial affairs come under scrutiny, including £5 million from a crypto billionaire and alleged support from a man convicted of fraud. He says he refuses to be judged by the mainstream media.
Why should they be the people that decide my fate when, as I repeat, I've done nothing wrong? No, I've decided that the people of Clacton should be the judges of my actions.
Former Reform MP Rupert Lowe, leader of Restore, says the by-election is an expensive distraction. The Lib Dem leader called the resignation a self-obsessed diatribe, the Greens a stunt. In the last hour, Prince Harry and other celebrity claimants have lost their privacy lawsuit against the publisher of the Daily Mail. Elton John, Baroness Lawrence and Liz Hurley had joined the Duke of Sussex in claiming voicemail hacking, landline tapping and the blagging of information. A High Court judge ruled none of the allegations were proven. Prince Harry didn't respond to the defeat at a speech celebrating his Invictus Games.
Together, we have a remarkable opportunity to learn from one another, to challenge each other, and ultimately to strengthen the support available for every wounded, injured and sick service person and veteran wherever they live.
A mother and her 2 children who hadn't been seen for several days have been found dead at a house near Bedford. Police say a suspect known to the victims is believed to have left the country. Volodymyr Zelensky has again called for Ukraine to join NATO, saying it makes sense. Speaking to leaders at a summit in Turkey, he says his country's location next to Russia is a source of extraordinary defensive capability. He asked Europe to step up military investment.
Europe needs its own effective anti-ballistic systems and missiles, and I urge all of you and all our partners to give it the attention it deserves.
And the UK's official budget forecaster says the pension triple lock will add billions of pounds to public spending in the decades ahead. It's after Andy Burnham suggested he would protect the measure. In the city a short time ago, the FTSE 100 was trading up 82 at 10,733. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.17. LBC weather, cloudy in the north, further south plenty of sunshine, hot in the southeast, highs there of 31 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Matt Hewitt.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Sheila Fogarty.
Hello there, good afternoon to you. If by chance you are just joining us, Nigel Farage, the MP for Clacton, the Reform UK MP for Clacton in Essex, and the leader of the party, has announced this lunchtime that he is resigning as MP for Clacton, only to stand again in a by-election as MP for Clacton. It's not unprecedented. MPs can do this. Let's talk to Natasha Clark, LBC's political editor again. Particularly, Natasha, if I could pick your brains a bit more about what we spoke about an hour or so ago, that if a by-election takes place or a general election, any investigations, parliamentary investigations into an individual or a party are suspended permanently?
Well, it's actually up to the discretion of the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner. I've just been trying to read the rules around this because it is quite an unusual situation that we have an MP that's standing down that says that they're going to re-stand again. That doesn't usually happen. It's happened a dozen times or so over the years, usually when an MP essentially resigns on a point of principle or wants to resign and then become a member of another party. We saw it, of course, when politicians jumped ship to be part of different parties and decided that in order to continue to become an MP, some of them say, actually, I do think I need a fresh mandate from the constituents that I serve. So that has happened. But it's not, as far as I can read, and like I say, I haven't been going back too far in the history books yet, but as far as I can see, that this is quite an unusual situation where there is an MP that is resigning at the same time as they face a Standards Commissioner investigation. So according to those rules, it does say that if a member ceases to be a member while an investigation is in process, the Commissioner will suspend their investigation until the member is re-elected. So it does sound that the Commissioner has the power essentially to suspend it and come back to it, which then does raise the question, Sheila, why is Nigel Farage doing this? Because if he can still face the prospect of being suspended after the Commissioner comes back and says, we do think potentially you've broken the rules here, you may be suspended from the Commons for 10 days, and that means you will have to face a by-election. And we should say also, Sheila, that these by-elections do cost taxpayers and the parties money. The Labour Party is not potentially in good stead in terms of their finance at the moment. It's between two major elections. They've had a couple of by-elections that they've had to fight. Each one costs between £250,000-300,000. So it's not a lot. It's not sort of a small amount of money that you're essentially expecting taxpayers and the party to have to pay. And there is a possibility that we could potentially have another one if the Commissioner finds against Nigel Farage.
I know we're clutching at all kinds of possibilities here because, as you say, if the Commissioner can resume that investigation again, then that doesn't solve his problem. So if that's what he was thinking. What about the rise of Restore and the increasing praise for Kemi Badenoch as well? Because these are two leaders of parties on the right, which is the battleground he wants to dominate before he even thinks about anything else, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Nigel Farage is probably going to have a tough time with Restore, as we indeed saw in the Makerfield by-election where they picked up 6%, 7% of the vote, which for a relatively unknown party like Restore, that's actually quite something. So we were quite surprised that the Rupert Lowe's party managed to get that slither of the vote there, which obviously, ate into the Reform vote. And we're seeing them, take sort of a few percentage points in polling left, right and centre. So that will be a threat for Nigel Farage as he goes into this by-election. And yes, as you say, the Tories are doing a little bit better, not much better, we should say, but they are performing a little bit better than potentially 2 years ago at the general election. An area like Clacton, you would expect that the Conservatives might pick up a little bit more support. So there are lots of questions at the moment swirling around about what this essentially means. I've been trying to talk to people in Reform about why they're doing it. A Reform source has told me this morning, they say the media are trying to be the judge, jury and executioner of a man that has done nothing illegal, and they can't even stand up him breaking any rules. He hasn't. They say we are taking back control and giving the people of Clacton their say. But equally, Sheila, my inbox has been filling up with responses from other parties. We've just in the last few minutes had response in from the Green Party and the Liberal Democrats. The Greens say, Zach Polanski says, Nigel Farage is once again trying to con the public with this stunt, trying to duck the fact that his history of taking dodgy donations is finally catching up with him. And a similar response from the Lib Dem leader Ed Davey. He says this self-obsessed diatribe is from a Team Trump. Ed Davey says Nigel Farage has spent his whole life dodging responsibility for his actions. This new stunt is his latest attempt to escape the consequences for his biggest grift, and we won't let him. So clearly lots of opposition critics trying to pile in now on Nigel Farage. They think this is all one big facade and way to try to get out. The question is today, do Reform think that this essentially will suspend this investigation? The rules seem to suggest that no, he will continue to face this investigation after, if indeed he does win this seat and return to Parliament.
And if he doesn't win it, Parliament would have no interest in continuing that investigation, would they?
They wouldn't. So essentially what would probably happen is what's happened with other MPs is that they do tend to wrap up their investigation and say what's happened so far. So with a former MP, Aaron Bell, he decided to resign from Parliament and he decided not to stand again. The Standards Commissioner then came back and said, if he'd been an MP, this is what we would have suggested. Right. We would have said, we would have suspended you from Parliament, but now, of course, he is null and void because he's no longer an MP. So essentially it takes the bit of the sting
left
out
the school.
of this. Exactly. He's left the school, so there's no point suspending him.
Thank you very much, Natasha Clark. Thanks for clearing that up because it was picking away at my brain. LBC's political editor. Let's get to your calls. Mitch has called from Lincoln. Hello, Mitch.
Hello. Here we are again, but with everything that Farage does, it seems to be unprecedented thing after unprecedented thing.
Well, it's not unprecedented, but it's new from him anyway.
Well, yeah. I mean, my pretty much is my plea to Clacton of just the easiest thing to avoid all of this and let all of this come out is just don't re-elect him in the first place. You know, but I suspect that, you know, I mean, he's a grifter, he's a charlatan, he is many, many different words that I cannot say on the radio. But, you know, the easiest way is just to not re-elect him. But I think that he thinks that the people of Clacton are genuinely stupid because I don't see another reason for a stunt like this than to basically him get re-elected and then go trancing around going, but look, I've got a massive mandate, nothing else matters. Because, you know, I mean, he spent the last how many weeks being questioned by journalists and basically gone, nobody cares. Nobody cares. I care. A lot of people I know care.
I care.
Yeah,
I care that our politics is as clean as it can be.
Well, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, you've got
that it involves and is about people in this country.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I've said this before. I'm amazed that he's gotten as far as he is. You know, I mean, the man that there's one thing I somewhat admire about him is that he seems to be unkillable and unlike, you know, he's like a cockroach. No matter how many times you kick him down, he'll keep coming back up. I mean, he tried with Brexit, you know, tried with the Brexit Party, then now again, and you know, I fail to see what his ultimate end goal with this is to sort of trance around with going, look, I've won a by-election, nothing else matters. It's the only thing that I can...
Yeah, and the idea that it's a media witch hunt, it just beggars belief, really. You know, or indeed a parliamentary witch hunt, because he claims both. He wants to frame
it's really
Parliament's...
Don't do it in the first place.
Well,
it's not a witch hunt.
Let's withhold judgment on what's been done for just for, you know, be absolutely rigorous.
Mm-hmm.
Parliament, the standards. Or the disciplinary and standards committee are allowed to investigate MPs, plain and simple, if anomalies appear. It may be an anomaly that turns out to be explicable, it may not. But the idea that either Parliament or the media has some kind of dirty tricks campaign to undermine him is for the birds.
It's something that's it's something out of his best mate's playbook.
Trump, yeah, you're right. I think so too. Mitch in Lincoln, thank you. Lucy Powell, Deputy Prime Minister, has tweeted this. She says, a parliamentary standards inquiry continues whether you're in the House or not. Interesting. Andy Burnham has said, a spokesman for Andy Burnham says, this is a gimmick designed to distract from serious allegations about Farage's funders. What really matters in politics is how we can change Westminster to take power for communities and take it back to people to make life more affordable for them. So in a way, this kind of speaks to Andy Burnham's whole approach and all the things he's been saying about Westminster life. Let's talk to Martin in Leicester. Hello, Martin.
Hello, Sheila.
What's on your mind about this?
Just driving home from the South East back to Leicestershire and thinking about this as it was announced. Obviously, he's already got what he wants in that he's stimulated a reaction from everybody. Everybody's getting very excited about it and so on.
Well, the conversation was being had already about the 5 million and the George Cottrell stuff. He hasn't stimulated that, has he?
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the fact that he has got this by-election coming up, which will be a huge circus, and he may or may not win the by-election. The chances are he might win it, and we'll go back to the situation as it is now.
But the by-election also amplifies his critics, doesn't it? It doesn't just amplify him.
Well, yeah. I mean, we could have a kind of huge kind of public debate between him and his critics and the people that opposed him in the by-election. The point that I was really making to your whoever it was answered the phone, very nice person, said really what I was saying was that I think that the best way forward would be for all the other parties to just not enter anybody in the election and to just let the whole thing sort of die down, ignore it almost. I know that's virtually impossible. But if he wins the by-election, Clacton get the same MP, Parliament doesn't change.
Well, listen, I mean, I understand why you're saying let the child have the tantrum and don't even pay them any attention, aren't you?
Yeah,
I think that's what you're saying.
Something like that,
but
yeah,
you can see how Restore and the Tories in particular will look at this and think, right, bring it on. Let's test it.
Well, they might do, yeah. And you know, if either one of them win it, the situation doesn't change enormously. Maybe it would be a bit of a boost for Restore, I don't know. Conservatives, nobody would be particularly surprised if they won. I
think they still would, actually. I think it was Andrew Marr was telling me 46% for Nigel Farage in the last election, 26% for the Conservatives. So to retake Clacton would be quite something for Kemi Badenoch leading the Conservatives. But again, she may not win it, but she may make a big leap, or the Tories may make a big leap. We'll see. We're getting ahead of ourselves, aren't we? Martin, thank you for your call, Martin, in Leicester, 3:16.
Weekdays from 7 a.m.
How much has been spent? My listeners want to know.
Straight to the point.
We have two different stories. Which is the truth?
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
What the hell lesson does that send to our children?
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. Download it now from your app store.
Go all Irish to France with great low prices. With Irish Ferries, you can for less. Irish Ferries. See travel differently. T's and C's apply.
Us kids are mesmerised by the mundane, entranced by the everyday. Where grown-ups see a snail, we see a slippery shelled beast from the undergrowth. But around 1 in 5 young children have a sight condition that can get in the way of all that wonder. The good news is, if these are found early, they can be managed or corrected. So book your child in eye test at Specsavers today. Find out more at specsavers.co.uk/kids tests.
Take summer by storm with Kia. Introducing the new Kia Sportage Storm, a unique limited edition of the UK's favourite family SUV. Test drive the award-winning Kia Sportage today and order yours by the 31st of August to get 5.9% APR representative and up to £3,000 PCP finance deposit contribution. Search Kia Take Summer by Storm.
Kia. Movement that inspires.
T's and C's apply. Kia Finance. To verify, visit kia.com/UK/favourite.
Time for a kitchen upgrade, but not sure who to trust? At Wix, you can include installation on a wide range of kitchens, all carried out by professional installers and covered by our 2-year workmanship guarantee. Plus, we're rated excellent on Trustpilot. Book your free kitchen design appointment at Wix.
Sheila Fogarty on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Listen, if you are just joining us here at LBC, let me trot you through a brief digest, and it will be brief, of what Nigel Farage has announced in about his political future, or the future of his public life is how he described it earlier on. He's basically, after a long lead-up in which he complained that the establishment was using, I'm quoting now, establishment using foul means against me. He rightly pointed to Reform's good record in the polls and in some recent elections. He said, I like making money. It shouldn't be regarded as a crime, alluding to some of the criticisms of his earnings and other money that he has come into possession of in his time. I've adored being MP for Clacton, he said. He resigned as MP for Clacton, or says he intends to, and let the people decide, he said. The people, quotes, putting 2 fingers up to the establishment. So he's trying to frame this, what's happened to him in recent weeks and months. He's trying to frame it as a parliamentary witch hunt against him and a media witch hunt against him. He's been very critical in that announcement of the Sunday Times and Sky News, and essentially framing himself as the victim. He spoke about his own personal security, and that has angered a number of you. I'll give you just one text, give you a flavour of it. Tell that to Joe Cox or David Amos's family. Absolutely despicable human, he says. Oh no, a mob, because he alluded to a mob attacking him and his colleagues. A mob like the ones you incited, says Andrew. That's quite a few people responding to that. Given that Nigel Farage deserves to be safe as he goes out and about, same as anybody else. Of course he does, and we should believe that about everybody, or we're not fit to operate in public life, really. And he deserves proper security, proportionate to the dangers that he faces. I thought I'd be talking about that in relation to Prince Harry today, but no. Nigel Farage, Count Binface, who, as you know, turns up in many elections, says, "Game on, Nige." That's his response to today's announcement from the leader of Reform UK. Michael Crick, a journalist that we've spoken to many times on this programme. If we have a by-election in Clacton, the other big parties, Tories, Labour, Lib Dems and Greens, will probably boycott it as a waste of money. So Farage victory will be meaningless, and he'll still face the wrath of the Standards Commissioner. But if he'd waited for the Standards Commissioner verdict, if it was adverse, then he fought the ensuing by-election, it would be harder for other parties to boycott that. Farage might well win, and his position will be much enhanced. There is an alternative, though, I would say to Michael, which is that he has the by-election, he wins the by-election, the Standards Committee rules seriously against him, another by-election is called. This could happen. Oh, my God, where's Brenda in Bristol? Another by-election is called, and then who knows, wins or loses, we'll see. He could end up losing after 2 by-elections. It's conceivable. Oh, my gosh. Ian in Surbiton, hello.
Hello, Sheila. They could end up calling Clacton Yo-Yo by the Sea by the way they're going on.
That would be great. I think we should start a campaign to rename it Yo-Yo by the Sea. I'd go there.
Yeah, I'll clear the decks. I'm not a Reform member. I have voted Reform at the last general election here in the land of the St Ed Davy, where a 10% Reform vote was most probably quite a victory. My feeling about this is, I've heard a couple of callers say this, and one of your contributors saying it's a waste of money, this by-election, it's going to cost them people money. What's the difference between a serving Labour MP with a majority who steps down so they can have a by-election that can get Andy Burnham in as DMP? Still cost the people money. Anybody ask Labour to pay for that?
Oh, but people did criticise it.
They should. And they should probably criticise Nigel for doing this. But the thing is, sometimes people are forced into a corner. And the one thing I've learned watching Nigel Farage is, do you remember when they were debanking him? He was on his programme on he was on his programme on GB News, and he said one evening, "I feel like leaving the country. I just feel like giving up and just leaving the country."
We said a bit of that today, didn't he? I could go to America, yeah.
And what did he do, Mr. Farage? He came back very soon after and said, "Well, I'm going to take the fight to them. If they want a war, they've got one." Well, here we are. We have a by-election war. He's asking all those parties, put up or shut up. It's as simple as that. It's going to cost us money, but the air has to be cleared. And if we have to have another election after the committee people, then it will be Yo-Yo by the Sea.
Well, it could be, couldn't it?
It's if it wasn't so serious, it'd be laughable. Because I've been watching this and thinking, well, they must have something. And then I read other people saying, "Oh, yes, but this act in 2000, some act about what you do in your private life in funding, it doesn't come into that." And I'm thinking, none of us know. You know, your Michael Cricks don't know, your Ed Davey don't know, your Zach Polanski's don't know. None of them know, but maybe the committee do.
Know what?
If he's done anything wrong.
Well, they're still investigating it, aren't they?
Exactly. We don't know. It's in an investigation. But he has basically said, well, you know what? Let's have the fight. You want the fight? Let's have it. And you know what? I quite like a politician that has the backbone to turn around and say, bring it on.
The problem is, Ian, it isn't your job or my job to investigate the specific. Well, I mean, as a journalist, it's my job, but obviously people like Gabriel Pogrund at the Times are investigating particular aspects of Nigel Farage's money and associations. But in terms of the investigation, it's the job of the parliamentary investigators, isn't it, to carry it, the commissioner to carry out that investigation. And that investigation will happen. So it's almost irrelevant what the people of Clacton think of. But you know what? Hang on a sec. It's almost irrelevant what they think about whether he's done right or wrong. It's not irrelevant what they think as to whether they want to vote for him or not. But it's almost an empty process, isn't it? Because if he wins, which I presume he wants to, the commissioner and the investigation can still continue that investigation and still sanction him any way they see fit.
He might just clip that bit and go, Cliff, sorry, Sheila Fogarty says your vote is irrelevant.
I didn't, but Ian, you're as bad as he is. I didn't just say that. I didn't just say that.
The investigation could make their vote irrelevant, but they're going to get the vote anyway.
No, their vote is precious. Everybody's vote is precious, but it could turn out to be irrelevant to the commissioner's investigation. Is what I mean.
Yeah,
because it's the commissioner's investigation. It's not mine. It's not yours. We can all give a view on politicians. That's what elections are about.
Sheila, I apologise for being mischievous.
It's all right. I quite like a bit of mischief. It's okay. Where would we be without a bit of mischief, Ian? Thank you, Ian in Surbiton. Nigel Farage says, I have spoken to the Chief Executive Officer of Tendring District Council. Reform has offered to cover the cost of the by-election. It never ends. I'll be writing to Rachel Reeves later today with the same message. Given that we asked for this by-election in the first place, it's only right that we pay for it, says Nigel Farage. Kemi Badenoch, for her part, says, I will make a statement on Nigel Farage's, quotes, hissy fit resignation at 3:35pm. Stay with us for that. It's 3:26. Sarah's called from Tunbridge. Hello, Sarah.
Hi there. Yes, well, on one level is, this saga, I'm enjoying it, but I have to say that I find this man just personally repulsive, but there you go. 3 years on the Fisheries Committee as an MEP, he went to one meeting out of 42 because he said it's pointless. The thing that really angered me was when he was justifying this 5 million. He said, I gave up 25 years of my life, and this is my reward. And I thought, who are we kidding? We don't give up our lives. A lot of people spend their lives having to clean tube trains or lavatories or wiping elderly people's bottoms. They don't say, I gave up 25 years of my life. I mean, why is he allowed? And no one mocked that. He made an awful lot of money as an MEP as well. I mean, why he suddenly said, I had no money. I mean, he actually says it's a good job to make money when he was an MEP. And he had his wife as well. And can you please tell me, how does his cult think he is a man of the people when after Brexit he had a celebration thing? It was at Claridge's. I believe it was Claridge's.
Honestly, Sarah, I'm not sure that people who really, truly love and support Nigel Farage care if he's as rich as Croesus. I honestly don't. Some other voters might, but there are other politicians who are as rich as Croesus as well. But I don't think for them it's an issue. They don't feel the insult that's in there, which is I'm a man of the people, but actually people just randomly give me 5 million quid, which doesn't happen to most of us, does it? But I don't think that's how they feel it. Can I just give you a bit more detail on the suspension of investigations by the Standards Commissioner? Just to add a bit more detail to what Natasha Clark, LBC's political editor, was telling us, that the Commissioner does indeed, she was telling us, have the discretion to continue the investigation. Points 39 and 40 of the Code. I'll read these short paragraphs to you. The Commissioner has the discretion to suspend investigations at any time. This might, for example, happen if the member suffers ill health or a bereavement during the time of the investigation, or where a related police investigation is taking place. If Parliament is dissolved, so for a general election, or the member otherwise ceases to be a member while an investigation is in process for a by-election, the Commissioner will suspend their investigation until the member is re-elected. So, doesn't mean an end to the investigation, as Natasha was saying. If the member is not returned to Parliament, the Commissioner will decide if it's appropriate and proportionate to resume their investigation. So very key there. The suspension of an investigation, for whatever reason, does not mean the end of the investigation. More of your calls in a few moments. We'll hear what Kemi Badenoch has to say. We'll reflect on Prince Harry's loss at the High Court as well. And your calls, as ever, on the usual number. It's 3:30. Time for the headlines from Matt Hewitt.
Nigel Farage has announced he'll resign as an MP to trigger a by-election in which he'll stand. The Reform leader's facing another standards investigation over financial support reportedly given to him by a convicted criminal. He says he's done nothing wrong. Prince Harry has lost his claim against the publisher of the Daily Mail for allegedly unlawful information gathering. A High Court judge found the Duke, alongside Sir Elton John and Baroness Doreen Lawrence, had failed to prove their allegations. And a mother and her 2 children have been found dead at a property in Bedfordshire. Officers say a suspect who was known to the victims is believed to have left the country. LBC weather, cloudy in the north, drizzle for Scotland and the far north of England. Further south, plenty of sunshine, hot in the southeast, highs of 12 to 31 degrees.
This is LBC.
Enter destination.
Car giant.
Car giant. No longer in business.
No way.
Way. Go to Big Motoring World, London's destination for quality used cars instead. In Enfield, Wimbledon or Camberley, choose from thousands of quality used cars with the lowest prices, guaranteed, all with free 3-month warranty and RAC breakdown cover.
Let's go.
Visit Big Motoring World of Colour UK for our price promise and terms and conditions.
In a world full of noise and uncertainty, IG is the investment platform that backs you. Forget the dubious tips from that guy down the pub. Get real-time insights, analysis and tools. No more fat cat brokers clawing your gains. Pay 0 commission on your investments. Switch to a platform trusted by British investors for over 50 years. IG. Trade, invest, progress. Your capital's at risk. Other fees may apply.
Psst. Hey, dogs. Yeah, I'm talking to you. If you're tired of dry, tasteless kibble or slop that plops out of a tin, you're going to want to hear this. Butternut Box makes only the freshest dog food with juicy meat and tender veg. It's the kind of food that makes dogs, tongue out, running around the kitchen happy. Let's hope your human heard this too. Butternut Box. Fresh food, happy dogs. Try Butternut Box today and get 25% off your first 2 boxes. Offer available online in the UK and Ireland to first-time customers only.
Last night, I was watching an episode of Amadeus where Mozart
exploded, launched another Real Housewife during Shiv Roy's wedding night, where she asks Tom for an open
sandwich, Chicago beef filling, cooked by a chef in a
pastel Regency gown. Oh, quite steamy.
You can now get Sky, Hey You, HBO Max, Disney Plus and Netflix together in one subscription, only with Sky.
Requires Sky Stream and Sky Ultimate TV subscription. Minimum broadband speed of 30 megabits per second recommended. 18+.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC with Sheila Fogarty. Text 84850.
Well, we've heard a variety of responses from political leaders and others about Nigel Farage's announcement earlier this afternoon at 2:00 that he is to resign as MP for Clacton. The leader of the Conservative Party, whose party will be, I presume, in that election, that by-election at Clacton, to fight for the right, the votes on the right. She's going to make a statement in the next few minutes, so we will hear what she has to say in just a second. Just waiting to speak a bit more about Prince Harry's loss at the High Court, which we will do in a moment with Louis Charalambous, the media lawyer and author of Better Call Louis. While I'm just waiting for Louis to be ready, let me read some of the texts that you have sent in on Nigel Farage's announcement. I had to switch off, says Rachel. I cannot listen to Farage's pity party any longer. He's destroyed this country with Brexit and wants us all to take the knee to apologise to him. Louis Charalambous is ready now to tell us what's happened to the Duke of Sussex and 6 other people, many of whose names you will know, as they lose their High Court privacy case. thank you for joining me today. So what happened?
Hello.
What was the ruling exactly?
Well, the ruling was 100% failure by the 7 claimants, and so the newspaper won every single one of its defences, and it's pretty catastrophic for the claimants, all 7 of them.
What did the judge say in the ruling? Why did they fail? What was so heavily in favour of the papers?
Well, they failed to establish to a standard of proof that he required any of the claims, and there were multiple claims over very many articles, and he just did not think that the cases were good enough. And frankly, I wasn't surprised. Half the case had fallen away by the end of the case, which ran over 3 months. So it really, they had to prove specific hard evidence. They also lost one of their key witnesses who turned on them, so that really didn't help them either.
What, in your view, what was missing from their attempts to prove it?
Hard evidence, because they were relying substantially on proving the case by inferring that there must have been the misconduct must mean that there was unlawful activity, and that just didn't stand up to any proof.
I imagine the judge was weighing up as well the freedom of the press to operate. I mean, in a way, my conversation around Nigel Farage this hour is on a similar basis, or partly on a similar basis, the freedom of the press to operate and where those lines are drawn. So it's quite substantial for the press generally, isn't it, this?
Well, the journalists came along armed both with notebooks and memories, and they were able to say, this is how I got the information. I got it from a legitimate source. I didn't break the law. It's not an entire clean bill of health. The judge did find that the payments to private investigators were such that there would have been some form of information gathering that wasn't legal, but certainly nothing specific about the particular articles that were being complained about by these claimants.
And of course it was a civil case, so the burden lay with the claimants to prove the facts, as you've alluded to. He said, excuse me, the judge said, suspicion, even understandable suspicion, is not proof, alluding to a claim made by Prince Harry, so understandable suspicion. I think there was an understanding, not just of Prince Harry, but of others when they spoke, that they couldn't quite work out what was happening to information that they knew only certain people could know. But there's another big step to make, isn't there, to prove that it was that journalist or that paper.
Yeah. And again, it comes back to relying on infer from these facts that there was unlawful information gathering. And of course, the newspaper and its journalists came along and said, well, I was relying on a source. Sometimes it might be a friend, or it might even be someone speaking on their behalf rather than, blagging, which is the term used for unlawful information gathering in these circumstances.
And also, I mean, I'm sure the same is true in the world of law, but in journalism for sure, people like to think they know stuff. And so sometimes when you talk to people, the person, not the journalist, they like to give the impression that they know stuff. So if they have a scintilla about a prince or a singer or an actor or whatever, they might share it just to make themselves feel sort of bigger. And then off you go. The journalist knows what to do with that tiny scintilla of a story and make it look and seem bigger,
People love to gossip.
Human nature.
Yeah.
It's Shakespearean in a way, isn't it? Is that the end of it then? No recourse?
Well, of course, any losing party can appeal. I think if the claimants do appeal these cases, they'll be unsuccessful, but they can always give it a try. There's a humongous cost bill to pay at the end of all of this. And it will have to be met by the claimants and their insurers.
And the judge...
20 million plus. At the moment, the figures being banded around are 15, 20 million plus.
Wow, really? That big?
Yeah.
Let's hope they are insured. I imagine they are. And the judge as well said it's possible that friends did leak information, but that's not necessarily the journalist doing anything wrong when that happens.
No, that's lawful information gathering, If you know someone famous and you decide you're going to say something to a journalist, that's not unlawful. It's when you start paying for information that you shouldn't get, that's private information. That was the essence of these cases.
Thank you very much indeed, Louis. Louis Charalambos, media lawyer and author of Better Call Louis. I think Kemi Badenoch is speaking now. Here we go.
This is the establishment in a by-election, standing down to stand up again. It's quite a smart move, isn't it?
How is it smart? Who's he fighting? I mean, what I saw was a man who was cracking under the pressure. He went on telly having a hissy fit because for the first time, he is finally having to face some scrutiny after a very long honeymoon, and he cannot handle it. All of us, MPs, have to register our donations. We have to register our gifts. Nobody is above the law. He decides that he doesn't want to do what everyone else has to do, that he's better than everybody, and now there's an investigation. There should not be a by-election on his terms. What there should be is a by-election if the investigation finds him guilty. Those are the rules. No one else has tried to break those rules except Nigel Farage. He is a man who is cracking under pressure. That's why he was shouting at journalists yesterday. And what we have to ask ourselves is this someone who can do the top job? He hasn't become Prime Minister yet, and he's already cracking under the pressure.
But he clearly believes that his standoff over funding, essentially over the way that has been investigated, he's said that he feels essentially he's been picked on. There's parts of the media that are gunning for him. That's not a feeling you would ever understand.
No.
But yeah, he seems to feel this very intensely, and he wants to take it to the voters in Clacton as a sort of higher authority. And go with me. But in that case, if he wins, and he may win handsomely, it will look like he took the daring, unorthodox move and won.
No. Let's be honest. The thing he should do is answer some questions. He should man up and answer some questions. He hasn't had a press conference since these scandals broke, whether about George Cotterill at the weekend or the extremely dodgy £5 million gift, which he got for reasons that he cannot explain. He should come out and answer those questions. Instead, he's hiding, saying, they're out to get me. This is paranoia. Nobody's out to get him. I remember when Starmer had his freebie scandal, when Boris Johnson had Partygate. Everybody in public life has to answer difficult questions. He thinks that he doesn't need to answer that. And what's going to happen is the poor voters in Clacton having to fight 2 by-elections. They already get a chance to have their say, in fact, twice, with the recall petition and then with a by-election, which only happens if the Standards Committee finds him guilty. And basically, in doing this, what he is saying is that he's already guilty. It feels like an admission of guilt. He should have come out, acknowledged that he'd done something wrong, said sorry, and everybody would have moved on. Instead, he doesn't want to do that. We're now having another man's ego by-election, just as we had in Makerfield, a by-election about one person's ego, one person's job.
Didn't work out too badly for the guy who won in Makerfield.
Well, we also had another by-election that day in Aberdeen South, which was about thousands of people's jobs all across the country.
We will leave that there.
That's what matters.
The leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, in conversation on X, a live interview on X with Anne McElvoy, the journalist Anne McElvoy. Well, she certainly came out strong, didn't she, accusing Nigel Farage of being paranoid, saying he should man up, that the by-election should not be happening on his terms. It should only happen if he's found to have broken those rules. She said he's cracking under the scrutiny, the normal scrutiny, she says, that all political leaders are on the receiving end of. She said he has had a very long honeymoon and described it as another man's ego by-election, referring to Makerfield, one can only imagine. Let's hear from Damien in Weston-super-Mare. Hello, Damien.
Hi there, Sheila. How are you?
I'm okay, yes, yeah.
Good. Basically, I've got so much to say, so I'm really sorry if I ramble a little bit. Basically, Farage's whole tactic here is just, I find it completely ridiculous that you are basically trying to get out of an investigation by then having an investigation. It's really odd, because then if he wins this by-election, then the committee, from what I understand from hearing you and your guests speak, that they can just reopen it. So what is the point of this? It seems so pointless, and it is like all the other guests said. It's a distraction technique for the next couple of weeks. But it'll be the by-election, not the £5 million gift or the other allegations against him. And then the one of your previous callers when I was driving home was saying about how Reform don't seem to get the media attention. I mean, I think every day there's someone on Reform on Channel 5, and there's constantly, Youssef is on Question Time. So I don't really get why people think that Reform aren't getting the media attention that they, quote, deserve when they're constantly on the media.
Well, also, I think it's the scrutiny that he himself is complaining about, isn't it?
Yeah, well, but then think back to Angela Rayner. So she did her tax on her house, right? That was weeks and weeks and weeks of media headlines about how she dodged tax and all this. And then she went, oh, yeah, fine, I admit it. I was given some incorrect information. All right, cool, great. You're given incorrect information, you've owned up to it, fantastic. You don't need to resign as Deputy Prime Minister. But according to Farage, one bit of scrutiny for him, and suddenly it's a witch hunt. And he's gone into this whole melodramatic drama about him being, hounded by journalists.
Do you think it's a tantrum?
100% a tantrum. He's kicking his toys out the pram. He's decided that he's going to cost Clacton, 250,000, 300,000 to run a by-election that doesn't need to be run, and then also potentially be in the same situation where he is now.
Well, he says the party. What do you make of the party offering to pay for the by-election?
Well, good for Reform. I mean, if they've got 300k to spend, then let them spend 300,000.
Well, he's got 5 million to spend, so maybe he'll cough up for it. We'll see. Thanks, Damien. Damien in Weston-super-Mare. 3:46.
Coming up at 4 on LBC, Tom Swarbrick.
Nigel Farage does his best Wolf of Wall Street impression, saying, I'm not leaving, as he hopes that a victory down by the seaside will wash away the questions around his funding. Will it?
Tom Swarbrick at 4. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Vodafone is backing the UK with an £11 billion investment to make the nation's biggest network even better.
Fair play, that's a big commitment.
So you can launch that business.
So I can start selling my model trains in Pwllheli.
Multitask in a haze of glory.
I could stream Wimbledon whilst on a video call.
Start doing more of what you love from more places. Opportunity awaits. Switch to Vodafone today on the nation's network.
Nation's network means UK's biggest network through Vodafone 3 merger based on mobile sites versus major providers. Network improvements by 2034. See vodafone.co.uk/TNN. Subject to coverage.
Time for a kitchen upgrade, but not sure who to trust? At Wix, you can include installation on a wide range of kitchens, all carried out by professional installers and covered by our 2-year workmanship guarantee. Plus, we're rated excellent on Trustpilot. Book your free kitchen design appointment at Wix.
Take summer by storm with Kia. Introducing the new Kia Sportage Storm, a unique limited edition of the UK's favourite family SUV. Test drive the award-winning Kia Sportage today and order yours by the 31st of August to get 5.9% APR representative and up to £3,000 PCP finance deposit contribution. Search Kia Takes Summer by Storm. Kia. Movement that inspires. T's and C's apply. Kia Finance. To verify, visit kia.com/UK/favourite.
Get unlimited video calls with vets from First Vet with Pets in a Pickle. For pet insurance policies as unique as they are, visit petsinnapickle.co.uk.
A message from TfL.
I saw him in the local news a few days after. His name's Rakesh. They had to put him into a coma just because I didn't look again at that turning. He had 2 kids. How did I not see his bike ahead of me? Well, I didn't look again. He didn't make it.
Drivers, take another look, not a life. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
You can now get Sky, HBO Max, Disney Plus, Netflix and Hey You together in one subscription. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, take your seats on your sofas, brew your cuppers and turn your phones to silent. Because the world of ultimate entertainment is about to begin. Sit back, relax and head to sky.com to find out more.
Shh. It's starting.
Requires Sky Stream and Sky Ultimate TV subscription. Minimum broadband speed of 30 megabits per second recommended. 18 plus.
This is LBC. Message Sheila Fogarty on WhatsApp now on 0345 60 60 973.
Let's talk, shall we, to Lewis Goodall, presenter of Sundays with Lewis Goodall on LBC and co-host of Global's podcast News Agents. I'm sniggering to myself, Lewis, because I said that rather like a children's TV presenter, didn't I? Let's go through the round window.
There he is in his pink castle.
There he is in his pink castle. Now, none of us woke up thinking this would happen today, did we?
No, we certainly didn't. I mean, when that news dropped, of course, Sheila, or when he said he would be making an announcement about his future, I think everybody thought the same thing, which was, is this going to be his resignation? Because, we've talked before about the speculation, and I think it's been clear for some time that Farage has been enjoying his period in politics less and less. He's hated these questions. You could see the sort of in between, some of the self-pity, some of it clearly undeserved, perhaps some of it around his daughter, a little bit more legitimate. You could see the fact that he was livid, irritated by all of this, and he's using this by-election as a means to try and put this behind him and to neutralise the questions around his finances. I think, as ever with Farage, one has to have in mind the United States and MAGA and the core of Trump. He will be thinking about the 2024 presidential election and thinking that this, on a much smaller micro scale, could do for Trump what 24 did for the president, which is, of course, the 2024 presidential election was not just an election, as in the electors were not just electors in the normal sense. They were basically jurors. They were deciding whether or not, to some extent, Donald Trump's crimes and misdemeanors, as applied by the Biden administration, but also state officials as well, whether they were disqualifying for him to become president. The reason that Donald Trump is not sat in a federal jail right now is because the electorate of the United States decided that they would rather he be president and not take those crimes as seriously as some might have wished they had. The problem with that, of course, and you can see that that's a strategy, there's two problems, I think, with that. One is that our electorate is not as polarised. I'm sure that they're, Reform are confident of a victory in Clacton, but nonetheless, our electorate is not as polarised. But the other problem with it as well is that, of course, by calling an election on the basis of these financial matters and alleged financial sort of problems and so on, you are inviting scrutiny into those matters. How can you go to the electorate and say, look, these things are immaterial, they're not germane, they've been hyped up, and that's fine, and that's okay, you can have that position, but even that requires some explanation as to why you think that. And so what Nigel Farage has done is, in an effort to put all of this behind him, basically put the question firmly, legitimately in front of the rest of us. And I think trying to navigate through that is going to be difficult.
And amplified his opposers as well, who'll run against him,
Well, absolutely. And you're able to, it is absolutely now fair game, even more fair game than it was. Nigel Farage is going to have to do some interviews throughout this, or he's going to have some questions. Look, he's not just been inspired by Donald Trump here. He's clearly been inspired by Andy Burnham. And Andy Burnham, we now seem to be, Sheila, living in the era where the by-election is used as a political bludgeon. It's used as a political tool to try and affect your ends. I'll just say there's some problems there. There are three types, it seems to me, of by-election campaign which are self-imposed, which are created to try and achieve a political effect. The one is where it all goes really well and the electorate understands what you're trying to do. That's the Andy Burnham example, which is where, he's able to say to make her feel, look, this by-election, we didn't need it, but what it's about is getting rid of the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. And if you vote for me, then that will happen. That did happen. The second type is the David Davis example, which happened in 2008, where David Davis calls a by-election about quite an abstruse, esoteric bit of policy about civil
liberties, yeah.
Yes, and the electorate sort of go along with it, and they're like, yeah, okay, David, yeah, we see where you're coming from, and they vote him back in, but the issue doesn't really catch fire, and it doesn't really do the thing that you were hoping it would do. That's the danger that this falls into, that trap with Farage. And then there's a third type as well, which is that it all goes wrong. And you call it about something, and it all escapes your control and your grasp really quickly because someone stands you didn't expect to stand. Who knows? Might there be a sort of Martin Bell-Shealer, anti-corruption candidate stands? I'm sure he wouldn't want it, and he wouldn't like him throwing my name into this, but a sort of Martin Lewis type who decided to stand and sort of throw all the pieces up into the air. Does the by-election become about a different issue in entirely something unpredictable. So there are three types, and the worry, I think, for Farage is that even if it's type number one, where everybody gets it and they buy the idea of this being an establishment versus the people by-election, it doesn't quite solve the issue anyway, which is that, okay, right now, the parliamentary authorities have ceased their inquiries into him because he will no longer be a member of parliament, but the rules are clear as crystal that as soon as he becomes an MP again, those investigations will resume. So it doesn't actually neutralise the issue in the way that you might hope it might.
And if he wins and the Commissioner of Investigation resumes and finds against him sufficiently to suspend him for 14 days and prompt a recall and therefore another by-election, it's round two, isn't it?
It's round two, yeah,
or round
exactly.
three,
And look,
I suppose, if you include the general election.
And therefore, Sheila, we've got to ask ourselves, are there deeper reasons as to why he's called this? And I think there are deeper reasons beyond the kind of exigencies of the case, right? So I think that this is a by-election which has been called and born of weakness, political weakness, not of strength. Look, Farage is a great showman. He senses political opportunity. He knows how to stay in the headlines. All the old political reflexes, his old tricks, they're as sharp as ever. But I think he knows that for a couple of reasons, it is being called because he is not in as stronger position as he'd like to be. Number one, we can see that overall in the polls, they're still ahead, but we know they've been declining for some time. Number two, he's now got a challenger to his right. Number three, he's not going to be the shiny new story in town anymore. Andy Burnham is the shiny new story in town, at least for a while. And fourth, and I think this is perhaps the most intriguing one, even with his traditional battle on the right within the Conservative Party, that is not a battle within the British establishment, the British right, of which he is assured of winning. I note a couple of interesting things. The extent to which Kemi Badenoch is receiving a very positive press in papers like The Times and The Mail and so on, which up to quite recently were giving really unalloyed kind of backing and approbation to Farage. And I note too that quite a few of these negative stories about his finances are coming from The Times and The Sunday Times, the Murdoch-owned newspapers, again, which until recently had been flirting with Nigel Farage. You can feel on the British right a kind of willingness to see a sort of Tory party revival, which could really damage Farage.
And,
so I think
Restore.
this is about him.
Let's not leave Restore out.
And
of
Restore
that
as well.
That balance. Yeah.
Indeed so. So I can sort of feel that this is an attempt. Look, Reform is a party which requires constant momentum. It's a party which to a large extent is based on vapour. It's based on the idea, political vapours, it's based on the idea of the public being constantly dissatisfied with you. And those same forces, of course, can consume the very revolutionaries that help ferment it, i.e. Farage. These things are, and therefore what Farage needs and what Reform needs, it needs constant sense of momentum and growth and victory and strength. And it needs that just to keep going, just to even just stand still. And recently they have been having these negative headlines, not perhaps doing as well as they might expect. So I think that this is an attempt from Farage out of that sudden weakness to try and get to coin a phrase, to take back control, to take back control of the narrative and to try and put himself back in where he likes to be, which is the leading force of British politics. And he hasn't felt like he's been.
No, but we've seen that he can upend things on a number of fronts, haven't we? So maybe it's
never underestimate the guy.
It's a high-risk gamble, just as Makerfield was, but it could work for him, I suppose.
It is high risk, and never underestimate the guy. That's for sure. The only thing I'd say is that with Burnham, it was high risk, but you could see what the reward was. And with this, it's high risk, but it's less clear to me what the win is, other than getting the momentum back a little bit, getting some positive headlines, getting back a sense of momentum. That's important. But the overall win, ultimately, it is not as if, even if he wins this by-election, it is not as if the media are going to shut up about this. If anything, one could argue that this by-election is a massive signal to the media, which is to say, you're onto something here. There could be more here. He's not doing this, as I say, because he feels in a position of strength about this story. It's because he feels buffeted by it, and it's a feeling of weakness.
Lewis, thank you very much for joining us today. Lewis Goodall, thank you to him, host of the Newsagents podcast. And don't forget, the latest episode drops at 5 today. If you missed any of the show today, you can listen back on our free Global Player app or the LBC app, where you can also stay up to date with the latest news, videos and opinion. You can download the official app for free from your app store right now. Coming up at 6 on LBC, it's Andrew Marr, more of Andrew Marr, but now it's time for more more of Tom Swarbrick.
Sheila, thank you very much indeed. Afternoon, folks. Welcome to the show. At 4 o'clock...
Why should they be the people that decide my fate?
A furious Reform leader, Nigel Farage, stands down as an MP, triggering a by-election in Clacton.
This will be a people versus the establishment by-election.
Nigel Farage livid at the treatment of him by the media, furious at a lack of publicly funded security, angry at the questions about whether he's taken dodgy money dodgily. Now sets up this by-election as the people versus the powerful, attempting to claim a mandate for him, warts and all. Despite the flack he has received, he says, for 20 years, the invasion, he says, of his privacy, Nigel Farage went full Jordan Belfort.
I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving!
The timing of this critical as the Standards Commission investigates Farage. Reform suggests they will stand in Clacton too. Will be live to the seaside. Do you think all the questions around his money will be washed away on a tide of victory?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 4 o'clock, Nigel Farage has announced he'll resign as an MP and fight a by-election.
It's a chance to stick two fingers up to the entire establishment.
The Reform leader's facing parliamentary investigations over unregistered sums of money. He says a £5 million gift pays for his security. LBC presenter Andrew Marr says he's seen Mr Farage out and about.
He does move with a lot of protection and a lot of security around him. I think that bit is true, that he does feel personally threatened a lot of the time. And of course people would say, yeah, but a lot of what you're saying means personal attacks on other people, many of whom you've never met. So, it goes both ways. But there's no doubt that he has felt attacked and intimidated by the mainstream media and by its supporters for an awful long time.
Sir Keir Starmer's called the by-election a desperate stunt.
It's obvious why he's doing it. He is up to his neck in sleaze. Politics should be about improving the lives of millions of people, not about personal gain, not about hiding dodgy donations.
Here are some of the views in Mr Farage's Clacton constituency.
I don't trust Nigel Farage. Didn't vote for any of them. Don't trust none of them, really.
Previously he said that it's his personal gift and no one should worry about that. But if he's resigning, that means he's genuinely scared now.
I just think he should give up totally. He's not been transparent.
Mr Farage insists he's done nothing wrong. Prince Harry and a group of other big names, including Sir Elton John and Liz Hurley, have lost their High Court fight against the publisher of the Daily Mail. They'd claimed associated newspapers had gathered information about them unlawfully through things like phone hacking and landline tapping. Helen Hodinot's following developments for LBC.
In his ruling, Mr Justice Nicklin said the allegations were serious but required more convincing evidence before being proven. He said the 7 claimants could not rely on suspicion, even where understandable, but that they had to prove information had been obtained unlawfully.
A mother and her 2 children who hadn't been seen for several days have been found dead at a house near Bedford. Police say a suspect known to the victims is believed to have left the country. And Coco Gauff's the first player into this year's women's semi-finals at Wimbledon. She beats fellow American Jessica Pegula in 3 sets. In the city, a short time ago, the FTSE 100 was trading up 33 points at 10,685. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.17. LBC weather, cloudy for the north tonight with drizzle in northwestern Scotland. Elsewhere, dry with clear spells, patchy fog in the southwest and lows of 12 to 20 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Matt Hewitt.
This is LBC. From Global, leading Britain's conversation with Tom Swarbrick.
Very good afternoon to you. 3 minutes past 4 at the time. Tom Swarbrick here on LBC this Tuesday afternoon. This hour,
I will fight to win. I will fight to continue the political revolution that reform has started.
the centre of the political universe has now moved south from Makerfield to Clacton as a pretty furious Nigel Farage says he is now standing down as an MP to trigger a by-election in the seat that he was representing. Furious because he says he's been ganged up on by the establishment, whether it is the images of some of his homes being published in the paper the other day, TV news channels knocking on the door of some of those homes to try and speak to those inside, or the attacks, he says, on I guess, his moral fibre by suggesting that he has done something wrong or dodgy or illegal or immoral by taking £5 million from a crypto billionaire to fund all aspects of his life, including his security. Enough, Farage says, as he attempts now to set up a by-election as the people versus the powerful.
I thought over the weekend, what shall I do? I could go out and try and make some real big money. I could go to the USA, where I've got plenty of offers. And then I thought, why should I be judged, today or in history in the future, by Sky News and their ilk? Why should they be the people that decide my fate when, as I repeat, I've done nothing wrong? I've thought about it hard, and I've decided today I will resign as a Member of Parliament for Clacton-on-Sea, thereby forcing a by-election, which should happen, I hope, in short order. No, I've decided that the people of Clacton should be the judges of my actions. This will be a people versus the establishment by-election. It's a chance to stick two fingers up to the entire establishment, to frankly tell them where to go. And that is why I will be putting my name forward to stand in this by-election. I will fight to win. I will fight to continue the political revolution that reform has started. And I would say this to you, the voters of Clacton: if I win, you win. Because if I lose, they win. And we will never, with the two old parties, get the type of fundamental change that we need to fix broken Britain.
Nigel Farage speaking a little earlier today. We'll get reaction from the Prime Minister. We'll get reaction from the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch. We'll be live to Clacton as well. You can watch us, of course, on YouTube. Layla Cunningham is with us, Reform UK candidate for the 2028 London mayoral election. Thank you very much indeed for coming on the programme, Layla. Why is this necessary, this by-election?
Well, because, listen, voters can weigh all the information available to them and make their own judgment. He's taking the question back to the votes instead of leaving it to Westminster. And that's what democratic accountability looks like.
And the question is what?
The question is, do you trust Nigel to be your MP? And as a result, do you trust Nigel to be your Prime Minister? He's putting his record before the electorate, and he's not hiding from scrutiny. He's letting the voters decide. In a democracy,
but they answered that question the last time he stood before them at an election, and they voted him in. So why do we need another go-around on that question?
Well, but because you see, there's a pylon, there's an establishment pylon. Nigel is clear, and I believe Nigel, and I think the people believe Nigel. He has done absolutely nothing wrong. But there's been a pylon from the press, from the establishment, that somehow he has done something wrong, and it's ruining his reputation. And frankly, it's up to the people of Clacton if they want to re-elect him as MP.
If he's not done anything wrong, why does he feel that a question needs re-answering by people in Clacton? Why can he not let the process that is undertaken at the moment by the Standards Commission and what have you answer the questions that he says he's got nothing to answer for?
Well, I mean, the parliamentary standards investigation is going to keep going. It will follow its own process. This by-election is a separate democratic decision for the people of Clacton. The voters can weigh all the information available to them and make their own judgment.
When will the writ be moved to have this by-election begin?
We'd like it moved ASAP. We've put it in today. I believe it's up to the Chancellor to approve it, and we're hoping as soon as possible. We're ready.
So Lee Anderson, your Chief Whip, has already moved the writ, which begins the process by which a date is set for this by-election. I asked that because, of course, the Standards Commission is doing its investigation anyway, and there is a potential here that we have a kind of ridiculous set of circumstances where Nigel Farage himself triggers a by-election. The Standards Commission reports back. The result in that by-election is declared one way or the other, and another by-election happens because a recall petition goes from the Standards Commission and we do it all again.
Well, I mean, it depends. The Standards Commission will be investigating something separate, and this is a separate election. And listen, this campaign is about putting the decision back where it belongs. Right now, you have the establishment and the press who are trying to effectively reverse a democratic vote. They're trying to stop reform in its tracks, and this campaign is about putting
Why do you think they're trying to reverse a democratic vote?
Well, they're trying to sully Nigel's reputation. He has done absolutely nothing wrong, but if you read all the press, you'd feel he has.
But if he's done nothing wrong,
they're
then...
even saying, how dare he own 5 homes, as if it's a crime for an MP to be successful and own homes. And we think that in a democracy, the voters are the final court of appeal. It's as simple as that.
I think the question they're asking is where the money came from to buy those 5 homes, aren't they?
No, they're not. They're asking why Nigel didn't declare sleeping at a friend's house. I mean,
they're not quite asking that. They're asking why has the money that he received when he was politically active as the chairman of Reform but not elected, why was that not declared? That's the question that need an answer, doesn't it?
Well, because he wasn't an MP and he didn't need to declare it.
But he was politically active at the time.
No, I mean, being the chairman of a political party is like an honorary role. He was not politically active, and
as the chairman of a political party.
Yeah, he was he was a social media influencer, and he was a GB News presenter, and that's
whilst also the leader of the chief executive of a political party.
Yeah, but he was not politically active. You know, there are loads of people that are staffed at Reform. I wouldn't call them all politically active,
even though they work for a political party.
Yeah, because there's
you're not an MP. You're not elected. You're standing as a candidate. You're politically active. You would agree?
Well, of course I am, because I'm actually standing as a candidate. But there are people.
So you would declare any money that went to you. You would declare that money in advance of potentially being elected.
If it was in my role of being a mayoral candidate, yes, of course I would.
Nigel Farage.
We have people. Hang on, Tom. We have people working here in the back office who work for a political party, but there is no way anyone would deem them to be politically active. You know, they're doing accounts. It's just there's a separation.
They're not knocking on doors. They're not handing out leaflets. They're not giving speeches.
Their name out there and asking people to vote for them.
But Nigel Farage, as leader of that organisation before he was an MP, was doing that. He was asking all of those things. He was saying vote Reform.
No, he was a social media influencer. He was a GB News supporter.
He was not. He was not publicly agitating for people to vote for Reform whilst the chairman of that organisation.
I haven't seen all his social media posts. I don't. You know, Nigel's convinced, and he's sure that he's sought legal advice. He has done nothing.
Yes. So you would agree, if he had been advocating for Reform in that role, he would be being politically active in the way in which you're absolutely right. The person who's the accountant would not.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know the exact term of what politically active, and it seems to be quite subjective depending on who you're talking to. But Nigel was not politically active. He was a social media influencer, and he was a GB News presenter.
How is this by-election going to be funded by Reform, as the party has suggested?
Through our funds.
Do you know how much it might cost?
I think it's somewhere around $250,000.
And that Reform is offering to pay that money. Do we know if that's legal? I mean, the Electoral Commission presumably would have a say on that.
I don't know if it's legal.
Okay.
But, I'm sure the Electoral Commission will have a say on it. But we are, Nigel's willing to put his money where his mouth is, and we're willing to pay for it.
The issue of his security came up during his speech. We know that he is, unfortunately, a victim of various forms of attack. He talked about an incident at a pub. We know the very well-documented ones that have happened, and that is awful. Whoever they happen to, it's
awful.
Absolutely irresponsible, completely ludicrous, shouldn't happen. Plenty of people in public life, unfortunately, are targeted in that way. Someone like Priti Patel, for example, former Home Secretary, received numerous threats, attacks, accepted parliamentary protection, and as a result, had to hand over her diary and her whereabouts in order to gain that protection. Why did Farage turn protection down, parliamentary protection down, or was it taken away?
I believe it was taken away.
By Parliament?
Yes.
Do we know why?
It was reduced by 70%, right after Charlie Kirk was murdered.
Do we know why it was reduced by 70%?
I don't know why. I'm not privy to that information.
No.
No.
Would it help to know why?
I mean, it would help to know why. Nigel, we all know that Nigel's constantly attacked. And I don't think people quite realise how awful it is to constantly know that there are people out there that want you dead. Literally murdered. They'll post about it online. It's an awful existence.
Do you think Nigel Farage standing in an election in Clacton would beat a representative of Andy Burnham's Labour Party?
100%. Of course he would, because the people of Clacton have rejected a Labour government, and they'll reject Andy Burnham's candidate. What's the difference between an Andy Burnham candidate or a Keir Starmer candidate?
And what would you say to restore to Rupert Lowe, who did some damage to Reform's vote share in the Makerfield by-election by taking votes off you? What would you say to him as he gears up to put forward a plan for the by-election in Clacton?
I think Rupert Lowe got about 2,000 or 3,000 votes. It was pretty minor. I mean, listen, we're not worried about any party. We're not worried about if Nigel's going to win. It's just by how big is he going to win?
Appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on. Leyla Cunningham is the Reform UK candidate for the 2028 London mayoral election. We're going to get a lot of that kind of questioning, I think, over the next few weeks as this by-election gears up. As you heard there, Leyla Cunningham suggesting that the Chief Whip of Reform, Lee Anderson, has moved the writ that starts the process of the date being found for this by-election to take place, a by-election called by Farage himself and presented as a people versus the powerful. Do away with, quotes, the establishment by voting for me, Nigel Farage says. And so all the questions about how he's funded, who does the funding, when it was given, whether it was declared, all those questions are washed away on the tide of victory. That Farage can, in a couple of weeks' time, if he's successful, as the Standards Commission keeps investigating, potentially as another by-election happens, but we'll come to that later, Farage can say, none of it matters, I won anyway. This is the kind of by-election equivalent of Trump saying, I can wander down Fifth Avenue and shoot someone and it'll all be fine. This is what's happening. I'm going to get you, ladies and gentlemen of Clacton, to decide whether or not you think any of this matters, irrespective of whether it actually matters. 0345 6060 973. Do you think that tactic will work? We'll get to your calls in a few moments. We'll hear from the Prime Minister. We'll hear from Kemi Badenoch. Lots of reaction this hour. We'll be in Clacton too. Tom Swarbrick on LBC 415.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. The Archies on the M25 clockwise. Traffic has been held just after junction 26 for Waltham Abbey because of an accident. There were severe delays on the M25 anti-clockwise from junction 17 for Maple Cross to junction 15 for the M4 after an accident earlier, so all the lanes are open there. On the M25 anti-clockwise, it's also stop-start to the Dartford Tunnel. It's taking about 40 minutes to get there from junction 3 for the M20. The A20 Swanley bypass is down to one lane going into town for emergency repairs between the M25 and the Sidcup bypass. The A40, the Westway, is closed going out of town between the Marylebone flyover and the Northern Roundabout. That's for roadworks, so there are delays. And on London Overground, there's no Windrush line between West Croydon and Sydenham, and there are severe delays on the Mildmay line.
Tonight with Andrew Marr from 6 p.m.
After being attacked relentlessly over his finances, Nigel Farage has triggered a by-election in his Clacton seat, portraying it as the British people against the establishment, although in reality it's the latest phase in Reform's struggle to the death with the Conservatives. Among my guests, Reform's Richard Tyson, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey. All that, crisis at NATO, a growing row over prisoner releases, and Prince Harry. Join me at 6.
Tonight with Andrew Marr from 6 p.m. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Oh, how relaxing was that yoga session. I feel so free.
Speak for yourself. I can never let go. Bladder leaks.
I know, right? I'm so done compromising. I got a new bit of yoga kit. Always discreet pads. Here, try for yourself next week.
Love you lots, but this thin pad won't keep up with my heavy leaks.
Just trust me on this one. So, all zen and liberated, are we?
Let's just say I found my flow.
Always discreet. Live with no compromise.
Call Tom Swarbrick 0345 6060 973 LBC.
From Goldbank London, a safe and sound way to buy and sell gold.
For buyers, you can buy from a wide range of gold and silver bars, coins, and themed collections to suit your budget.
For sellers, you can get an instant valuation online and sell your goods easily, conveniently, and securely.
Easy to buy,
easy to sell.
Start your journey in gold today.
Visit goldbank.co.uk.
Get the whole package with Octopus Energy EV. The car, the charger and the energy. Octopus Energy EV. Rated excellent on Trustpilot from over 5,000 reviews.
Time for a kitchen upgrade, but not sure who to trust? At Wix, you can include installation on a wide range of kitchens, all carried out by professional installers and covered by our 2-year workmanship guarantee. Plus, we're rated excellent on Trustpilot. Book your free kitchen design appointment at Wix.
Vodafone is backing the UK with an £11 billion investment to make the nation's biggest network even better.
Fair play, that's a big commitment.
So you can launch that business.
So I can start selling my model trains in Pwllheli.
Multitask in a haze of glory.
I could stream Wimbledon whilst on a video call.
Start doing more of what you love from more places. Opportunity awaits. Switch to Vodafone today on the Nation's network.
Nation's network means UK's biggest network through Vodafone 3 merger based on mobile sites versus major providers. Network improvements by 2034. See vodafone.co.uk/TNN, subject to coverage.
Tom Swarbrick on LBC. Listen on your smart speaker. Just say, play LBC.
4:19 the time, Tom Swarbrick here on LBC on an afternoon where it just never stops, does it, in British politics at the moment? Just when you think you might have a clear week, nope, it's a heck of a long time, and now Nigel Farage has resigned as an MP, triggering a by-election in Clacton in which he says he will stand to try and pit the people against the establishment, to give the people of Clacton the opportunity to basically decide on whether or not the questions that are swirling around him and how he's funded his lifestyle and all the rest of it, whether or not any of that apparently matters. Of course, two things can be true at once. People can decide to vote for Farage and still think that these questions matter. Very interesting statement has come from Restore UK in the last few moments. I'm going to give you that in just a second. Very, very interesting, given that in Makerfield, where the centre of the political universe was only a few weeks ago, they did eat into the vote on the right and possibly upset the challenge that Reform were hoping to bring to Andy Burnham. Very interesting from Restore. Bring that in just a sec. To Turkey, first to Ankara. The NATO summit is underway. Keir Starmer is there, obviously, with other world leaders. This is what the Prime Minister says he thinks voters will do once they hear what Nigel Farage is attempting.
This is a desperate stunt from Nigel Farage, and it's obvious why he's doing it. He is up to his neck in sleaze. Politics should be about improving the lives of millions of people, not about personal gain, not about hiding dodgy donations. And I think the public will see this for exactly what it is.
Keir Starmer speaking in Turkey. Here's Restore Britain. Rupert Lowe, their leader, on X. The headline of this is I think going to take some explaining. I think the headline of this says, Restore Britain will not stand in the Clacton by-election. Second line, Restore Britain will stand in the Clacton by-election. But they say the second one, held later this year, when the investigations into Farage's finances conclude, as we all suspect they will. We are not going to participate, this is them, in a Reform-sponsored media circus over the summer months that is designed to puff up Farage's ego and deflect away from the wholly fair questions over why he has concealed such vast and irregular financial donations. Farage can play with his toys for the next 6 weeks, but Restore Britain is going to continue producing detailed policy papers exactly as we have been outlining how we can fix our country. That is what I'm interested in. Detail, data, policy, a plan. Rupert Lowe says, I feel for the people of Clacton who deserve so much better than this unnecessary sham forced on them throughout their summer. So that relates to, that bit about the other by-election which is coming in Clacton, relates to the Standards Commission investigation, which, once it is concluded, and depending on how it concludes, could end up triggering a by-election in Clacton, presumably immediately after the one that Nigel Farage has just brought upon himself. Keeping up? Good. Sam's in Bristol. Hi, Sam.
Hi, Tom. Nice to speak to you.
Your thoughts?
Well, I don't, whether the question or not whether this is going to work, I'm not sure. I sort of have a hope that we're not quite as polarised as the US, and we won't go down the sort of the Fifth Avenue but won't lose a vote route. But at the same time, I think there's two words that just describe this entire debacle, and that's vibe shift. We know how important vibes have become in politics recently. And Reform have become recently the whinge and cringe party. I mean, not long ago they were positive. They had, I think, inherently negative policies, but it was this positive vibe. It was, we're going to renew all the country. We're going to give you what the establishment hasn't given you. And in recent months, it's been nasty, whining old Tories like Braverman and Jenrick who are joining, and they seem to just be complaining and moaning about everything, probably so that they don't lose their older base to Restore and back to the Tories because they're on the up. I just think Farage is doing this to embolden himself to get a sort of positive vibe back to Reform, and I hope that the electorate sees through it, but I think he'll definitely win in Clacton.
Well, the polling would suggest that he might, particularly if Restore don't go for it this time around. So that will tell us what exactly? Nigel Farage, despite all the questions about money and what have you, is still popular in that part of the country. That's what that tells us, yeah?
It was a Tory safe seat for God knows how long, and now all of a sudden the Tories have been replaced by Reform. I mean, Reform are the Conservative Party. The fact that they just wear a different shade of blue, I think, is laughable in how close they are. They've got half of their shadow cabinet are former Tory members, loads of councillors are former Tories. And now, all of a sudden, you've got a party that's even further to the right of them. So we've just replaced the Tories and UKIP with Reform and Restore.
So the
I don't really
vibe
see
shift,
any difference.
to use your brilliant phrase, Sam, the vibe shift after, let's imagine, a Farage victory in Clacton, it moves to what?
Well, for him, and whether or not it cottons on or not, and I think the media circus will follow him as well. For him, it will be, I'm on the up now, I'm emboldened.
I can't be beaten.
No,
even with all this stuff.
People have had their and like I said, a great point before, it might have been Kemi Badenoch, it might have been the person that spoke after them, it might have been Lewis Goodall, actually. This is a distraction now. This is all that the media will talk about over the next couple of weeks. The £5 million mentioned, the George Cottrell, whatever his name is, Posh George, he'll be mentioned. But realistically, this is going to be the main story now. For him, he's going to be on the up again.
Yeah, it will be the main story.
This whinging, moaning sort of vibe that Reform have started to pick up over the last few months.
It will be the main story, but it will also mean that Nigel Farage is out on the stump in Clacton being asked constantly about funding, about his relationship with Posh George or whatever, about why he didn't declare the money. The questions about the money are going to be endless for the next few weeks. But I guess Farage is hoping to blow through all of that and point to a mandate which says no one cares, media establishment. No one cares. Sam, thank you. 03456060973. If they thought they'd had it tough before, the poor people of Clacton, given that I remember going to Clacton with David Mellor and Ken Livingstone about 10 years ago when there was a by-election down there. They've been the centre of the political universe for some time. Shivani Sharma is there, LBC's East of England correspondent, talking to the good people of Clacton on the beach, presumably. Shiv, hi.
Good afternoon, Tom. Yeah, the sun is shining, the ice creams are out, people seem to be swimming, so what better time to come down here, the world's media, and ask them about the fact that they're facing a by-election after Nigel Farage's speech this afternoon. And for context, Tom, he clearly enjoys some popularity here. In 2024, he got about 46% of the vote, 21,000 votes, a majority of more than 8,000 people. And when I've come here before and asked constituents about things like the £5 million, about the investigation, the reactions have been pretty split down the line. Slightly more, I'd say, probably didn't care about it than those who did. This time, I would say it's flipped a bit. From the people, certainly, that I've been speaking to here so far this afternoon, once they got over the confusion of their MP saying he's going to be resigning only to stand again, more people seem unimpressed with his decision.
Farage hasn't done anything for Clacton since he's been here, and it's just putting himself in the front page again.
Good. I'm all for him.
You're pro Nigel Farage?
Yes. Well done, whatever he does, yeah.
And what he's saying, this is going to be about two fingers up to the establishment. It's going to be about the people versus the establishment. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do, yeah. Because there's too many snidey ones up the top already. Yeah. And that they hide it, but he couldn't hide it. And they've been out to get him for a long while.
I just think he should give up totally. He's not been transparent. And it was bad enough, like the first time, with the crypto stuff. What was it, 5 million or something? But now with this other guy who's got a history of crime and God knows what, and he can't be transparent. He doesn't actually say what he's used the money on.
Shivani Sharma down there with the good people of Clacton this afternoon as they face another by-election. Thank you, Shivani. Although there is a possibility, of course, that, like Restore, none of the other political parties bother putting up a candidate, leaving Nigel Farage as the only candidate in his people versus the establishment fight. At that point, I'll be honest with you, I'm not quite sure what happens. I presume that somebody would stand against him. I mean, the Monster Raving Loony Party or Count Binface or somebody would take the publicity of doing it. But it would hardly be the populist showdown that Nigel Farage, I think, is hoping for, not least because there is the possibility that there's another by-election once the Standards Commission does report, as it will continue to investigate him for as long as he is a Member of Parliament, which he is hoping to be. Teddy's a first-time caller in Reigate. Teddy.
Hello, yeah, first-time caller, long-time listener. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, I just think it's completely transparent that I want to echo everything that your last caller said, really. He just wants to completely divert all the attention away from the two major talking points that have been going on against him. And obviously, maybe he's not smart enough to realise that if re-elected, which I think is a real possibility, unfortunately, these investigations will just continue on. So it's just prolonging it at all of our expense, really.
It might be, but does any of it... it matters in the sense that he's being asked questions about it and this is a problem for him currently. But if it's a problem that means that nevertheless he is elected despite the problem, then it's not so much of a problem for him, is it, I guess?
Yeah, but I guess that's just from the Clacton constituents. I mean, it's the rest of the country, or definitely people who I run in circles with, do care about these things still. I think as well, I've seen a lot of commentary coming from Clacton, from pages like Political Joe and Reform and Not Your Friends, of really trying to sway the people of Clacton's decision, and not so much sway, but just inform them of who their MP is.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, there's going to be persuasion used because they'll want to vote a certain way. I mean, again, it's not much of a showdown if it's just Nigel Farage, Count Binface and the Monster Raving Loony Party and everyone else has pulled away. I'm not sure Count Binface, God love him, represents the establishment. Teddy, thank you very much indeed. Just want to clear up this question about the Standards Commission and whether or not they continue to investigate an individual or whether or not this means that investigation is washed away. This is what is said by the Standards Committee themselves. It was in a report about a particular MP, now no longer MP, Andrew Bridgen. It says, if Parliament is dissolved or the member otherwise ceases to be a member while an investigation is in progress, the Commissioner will suspend their investigation until the member is re-elected. If the member is not returned to Parliament, the Commissioner will decide if it is appropriate and proportionate to resume their investigation. So if Nigel Farage is turned down, end of story. But then that's the end of the story. If he's re-elected, investigation carries on. So I get the tactic from Farage. I understand what he's doing. He's seizing the opportunity before it's foisted on him and trying to make the narrative his own. It's in that sense, it's quote unquote good politics. I don't understand the strategy. What's the strategy here? You're listening to Tom Swarbrick on LBC. Coming up...
People are finding that they're paying off, say £12,000 and find that they haven't even made a dent in the original debt.
A scathing report by the Treasury Committee has concluded that student loans were missold to millions of people. Do you think graduates should be compensated? Details after this. 4:31 news headlines. Matt Hewitt.
Nigel Farage is resigning as an MP, but says he'll stand again in what he's calling a people versus the establishment by-election. The Reform leader claims he's angrier than he's ever been over scrutiny over his finances and faces a new parliamentary investigation. He denies wrongdoing. Prince Harry and a number of high-profile people have lost their legal battle against the Daily Mail's publisher over claims of unlawful information gathering. A High Court judge found he and his co-claimants, including Sir Elton John and Elizabeth Hurley, failed to prove their allegations. And Russia's a step closer to taking part in the Olympics again. The IOC's provisionally lifted its suspension of the country's Olympic Committee ahead of the 2028 Games in LA. LBC weather, cloudy for the north tonight with drizzle in northwest Scotland. Elsewhere, dry with clear spells, lows of 12 to 20 degrees.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
No need to seek work for 100,000 people who have ADHD being paid disability benefits. Maddie Alexander-Grant is a disability advocate.
Having ADHD doesn't just automatically give you a tick on